You know, sometimes it says let's go, and I'm just not ready to go. Unfortunately, that timer doesn't have much of a manual adjustment to it. All right, let's see. I think all my audio is there. The cats are fretting in the background. We're good to go. Awesome. Hello, and welcome to Plugging Along, a stream dedicated to Lotro plugins. Last time on Plugging Along, we made some great progress updating the MinstrelBuff plugin patch that I've been working on for a few years with the Minstrel 3.0 changes that arrived with update 33.2. After the stream, I finished all the little things I could think of and released MinstrelBuff II to the world. Today, we're going to check out what those changes were and then get started on some new features based on the new Minstrel. As always, feel free to jump into chat with your thoughts and questions. Let's see. On the sidebar there, I'm not actually really doing much for Extra Life this year, but if you are of a mind to donate money to children's hospitals and would like to donate it in support of Little Redhead's drive, I'm going to paste that link into chat there. You can click on through to there and donate any amount of money. All of it's good. It all helps children, and I hear children are pretty neat. So feel free to do that. I will try to keep an eye on it. If anyone does donate, I too will offer to do these cute little Hobbit flips that you could get in-game with the /flip emote. Awesome. So one of those for everyone who donates, regardless of the amount. Possibly other things if I can think of it. So that's over there on the sidebar. That's what that's all about. And there's a link in chat there. I'll try to remember to paste that from time to time so that you can click through wherever. Okay. What else? Any other business to look at? I think that's pretty much it. So let's go ahead and switch on over to desktop mode. There we go. And we'll go ahead and bring up, first of all, the source control application that I use, which is called Fork. Hard to search for, but go to fork.dev if you want to look into using it yourself. It's a free tool and is, in my case, wrapping around a Git repository. Okay, so let's take a look. When we were last here, that was the 27th. But I didn't actually start committing things until after midnight, so that was the 28th. You can see the first commit there was local time 4 in the morning. This was perhaps a series of poor choices I made regarding my sleep schedule, but sometimes you just are in the groove and you just really want to get some progress done and get something out into the world. And that was my case there. So we have some initial, that's the first commit here in this repository was me changing MinstrelBuff from being a patch on top of Melida's MinstrelBuff to it being living in the Cube plugins world. So we need to come on over here. I need to put those files back. Hang on a second. I ripped those files away to prepare for the stream. Let's see, where are those? MinstrelBuff. Put that back. All right, there we go. I moved those files aside because now if I go to the plugin manager and I do a refresh, we're going to have both MinstrelBuff and MinstrelBuff II, and that can be a little confusing. So let's bring that back. Come on over to MinstrelBuff. Okay, so we can see, oh good. Excellent. So the last commit that I did on stream was what we finished off on stream, which was the overlays showing was an Anthem lesser, greater, I can't do it now, I'm not in combat, lesser, greater, or both lesser and greater. If you hear rustling in the background, I do believe the cats are digging through the trash. Not well.
They're playing with the bag.
Excellent. Okay, so that was the overlay, and then I spent some time trying to figure out what else. What else needed to change if I was going to release something as its own plugin rather than a patch on someone else's plugin? Now again, I'm not taking credit for all the excellent work that Melida's already done, but the way the Lotro interface site works is that there is an account that is responsible for that plugin. So kudos definitely to Melida for the core of what is there. There have just been substantial changes since Melida stopped doing development. The first thing that I really wanted to do was organize the drag bar files. Well, what does that mean? Well, if we pop on into an Explorer window, in this case, Lord of the Rings Online in our Documents folder, and come on into plugins. Let's see. Let's go ahead and step backward in time to before I did that organization. We can step backward and forward through time here through the magic of source control, and that's one of the brilliance of it. So if you come into the MinstrelBuff window and go to resources, then all of these image files are just scattered throughout. In fact, let me swap which one's which over here. I got a little less desktop space to work with today, thanks to Extra Live taking just a few pixels. It's like 250 by 200, such a small amount, and yet that's where I normally put things. We have here our resources folder, and for me, this resources folder was incredibly frustrating to work with because some of it was MinstrelBuff related, some of it was drag bars related, some of it was no longer used. And a lot of these correspond to specific themes. Some of them are general files that are used across multiple themes. And the whole thing felt really frustrating for me to kind of wade into and find a specific thing. Like, task, find an image file that corresponds to theme number 3. All right, well, I guess we're digging into source code to figure that one out, right? So the first thing I wanted to do was take anything that's went with the drag bars library and put that into its own folder. And what does that look like? It's actually not too bad. Move those files along, and then in the source, we need to go ahead and update the path to it. So the easiest thing, as we can see here, is don't hard code that path everywhere. Go ahead and hoist it into a single variable that you can then use when you're building your path, your full paths. So the folder in which the files are in, and then drag whatever. And so that's the change everywhere, is use that variable and then change the variable to be wherever it happens to be. In this case, just a subfolder called drag bar. So let's step forward in time and see what that looks like. Yep, check it out. Awesome. So now we have a drag bar folder, and any of the drag bar specific images are there, and more importantly, they're not in the way of the rest of this stuff. The next thing was more complicated, and this is sort of, the goal was the one-time work to separate all of the theme-specific files, and so the theme list is where we list all of those other ones. Hey, Casper. All right, we got a cat visiting. That's Casper. You can tell because he's spooky white on just the tips of his paws. And the rest of him looks like he's been running around in the dust, which is probably true. So we have theme list, and we can actually just pop this file open. Theme list is where we have the list of themes that are going to show up in the options, and we're importing the files that contain the data for those themes. So this is a great place to put where's the root of these images going to be, so that each of these import statements already see themes path defined. Then for each of the themes, we can also, I meant to actually come back and clean this up. Maybe I did later. I was encountering a problem with the different, just trying to use a variable called like theme path across every themes file, and there was some irregularities happening, as if it was loading one file while processing another. I feel like if I declared that a local variable instead, like I should have, that wouldn't have been a problem. I meant to go back and try that, but it was like 6 in the morning, so I did not do that. Since we're thinking about it though, let's pop in to our to-do file and just make a note for later. Okay, themes files. Can we change, for instance, theme path 5 to local theme path? And let's quote this so I know I'm done talking about it. To local theme path instead? Question mark? Cool. I can forget about that for now. But same thing, each of these places that's hard coding a path to an image file, let's substitute in a variable. So you only have to change it in one place. And in that case, that is built on the other variable and the specific directory we want to find these things in. Awesome. So why was I doing this? What was the point of this? Well, when you release a plugin the first time, when those when that zip file is extracted, usually a zip file, could be something else. When that zip file is extracted and those files are copied into place, those are sort of your starting files, and it's difficult to delete or rename files in a subsequent release of that plugin. Maybe it's possible. I don't know of a way to do it. You can make new files. You can change the contents of existing files. But once a file is there, it's kind of just there, even if you stop using it, for people who are upgrading. Now, if you remove it and people download the file fresh, maybe they've got a new computer, maybe they spilled water on their old hard drive and are reinstalling, whatever the reason, if their Documents Lord of the Rings file is empty, and they download a fresh copy of your plugin, okay, cool. Now those files aren't there because they weren't there in that release. But anytime people are upgrading, those files just hang around. It's no big deal, but it's nice if you can avoid that problem in the first place. So I knew in the back of my head that I wanted to move these files around before I did a release, and so this was the time. The release date was rapidly approaching. As it turns out, it happened that night. But I wanted to make that happen. And so that was a definite must for me, is sort out all of these files, put them where I want them to go, all of that. So I went ahead and made an individual folder for each theme and numbered it with the number that was in that theme list. And in Windows, let's go ahead and step forward in time. Zoop. In Windows, Windows is pretty good about sorting things that look like a number as if the number were a number and not just letters. So instead of being the digit 1 and space, it's comparing the number 1 and 11. With naive sorting implementations, 1 will be followed by 11, 12, 13, then 2, 21, 22, 23, 3, 31, 32. Alex says, hello all from the world chat. Hello! And so that's exactly the kind of naive sorting you'll see within Lord of the Rings, where you go to, say, a quest giver who has multiple quests. Those quests tend to be sorted alphabetically. If you go to a missions person, when the continuing adventures of Bilbo Baggins came out, they were the names of those missions were numbered 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, all the way up to 10. So when you had all 10 unlocked with the quest giver, 10 sorted right after 1 and before 11, because of course it does. 0 come. 1 comes before 2. So it went after 1 and before 2. Because that's a classic sign that you're just doing a straight up character by character comparison. It takes more effort to say, is the beginning of this, does that look like a number, or does some part of this look like a number? And if so, treat it as if it's a number and not just text. It takes more effort. It's non-trivial to write that algorithm, and it's even more non-trivial if you have to support multiple languages, as Lord of the Rings does. I wish, I have a magic wish list in my head, and if anyone from SSG is watching, just add a sort order to that entry to that table in the database. The quest, you have the name, just add a sort order. It's a 2-byte number, maybe just a 1-byte number, and if it's not there, treat it alphabetically. If it is there, go by the sort order first and then alphabetically, and then you can order quests from Quest Giver in plot order, not just alphabetical. And you'll see that, I remember specifically in outside Tinador and Avendom, there's a quest hub on a little island, and you'll talk to them and you'll be like, now that you're going to wherever, I really could use your help cleaning up the gravestones or whatever. And then the next quest, I need you to go to wherever. It's like, I would have picked those up just from a story perspective in the other order if I'd known about it, right? And if there was a sort order that was separate from alphabetical order, you would have a canonical ordering for those things, regardless of language, regardless of whatever. So that's sort of if I could wave a magic wand and change anything, I would add sort order to things like deeds, to things like quests, and whatever. Anyway, that's not continuing our progress of reviewing these changes. So we have these themes now. All the different theme files are separated out into their own directory, and anything that's used across multiple themes is just sitting in the themes directory. And in resources, we now have the drag bar stuff, the theme stuff, We have a file called down arrow. That's weird. And we have the MinstrelBuff icon, which is used for the plugin itself. That's what shows up here in the plugin manager. Okay, great. What's the next stuff? The next stuff is we had new icons for the new anthems in game. So I wanted to go ahead and add those in. Awesome. That down arrow, couldn't find any references to it. Got rid of it. Awesome. That down arrow never will show up, but we still have it in source control if it turns out it was necessary. Some to-do file changes to show what was done. Awesome. There was a bug. We were always assuming there was an overlay to work with, but the Anthem of the Free People doesn't have an overlay. And so I was just getting a null exception, null variable exception there, null reference exception. And so add an if check for that. Awesome. Whoops, I misspelled my thing there. I had a Z order there that was causing the text to show on top of game windows. You put a quest window on top of the plugin, and the little overlay L or G or L plus G would show up. That was not intentional, so had to get rid of that. French and German strings, cool. That one's pretty straightforward, actually. You load up the game in French or German, and that is to say, when the launcher comes up, oh, that's the Bulwer one. Whoopsie. Gotta load up the right one. Otherwise, it'll want me to patch. So when you pull up the launcher, this little EN button, the fourth button from the right on the top there, is your language selection button. It's very easy to not even realize it's there. Hey, Casper, don't bump my water, okay? It's very easy to not realize that it's there, but if you click it, you'll get a little drop-down with the 3 officially supported languages, English, Deutsch, and Francois, German and French. If you hover over it, you'll also get that tooltip that says select a language in the order German, English, French, which is fascinating because internally you would expect that to be D-E-E-N and F-R, which suggests this is just being sorted by the localization two-letter code and not by the order in which they show up in the menu. And again, it's just one of those default sort order, perhaps. I think that's fantastic. I wonder if that order changes, though, depending on your language. I'm not going to worry about that. So you pop over to German. If you have not patched it recently, you will have to patch. Each of the language files is downloaded separately, so if you only play English, you've never downloaded all of those German updates, all those French updates. So switch over to German or French, you'll have to wait for it to patch. Once it's done patching, you can log in, and the game plays, of course, exactly the same, except it's going to be a little challenging if you want to do a /loc command for a bug report, for instance, because it's not /loc, that stands for location, and that's an English word. There's handy references out on the forums, so Lotro chat commands German. If I do a search like that, we can see other people have done this before us. We don't need to recreate the wheel, as it were, and this person has done a great job of just German, English, and French. So just coming down here to the /loc, and we can see it is /emp in the French. I assume the French word for location starts with EMP, and /POS, probably for the German equivalent of Positie, which it is in Dutch. So, and yeah, so this is a great reference. Love it. Thank you so much, Thurlor, for putting that together and sticking it out in the forums. It's sort of my go-to for, oh, I need to do a thing. Now, Thurlor has done a lot of things that maybe aren't necessary for plugin development, like Chicken Drive, Poulet Drive, perhaps. But yeah, it's great. Love it. Thanks so much. Let me put a link to that into, might be emplacement in French, or the French pronounced version of that. Awesome. Okay. Oh, well, I'm typing into chat there. If you missed it, and if you want to toss money at SSG's Extra Life Drive to raise money for children's hospitals, you can follow that link. Little Redhead is participating this time around I Am Not, and you can chip in any amount of money there, and that will give you probably access to Extra Life information. This year's Extra Life information hasn't been released, but you can check out last year's Extra Life information at that link there. And usually, in the past, there's been rewards for donating to this charitable event. So if you donate up to whatever money amount, in fact, let's go ahead and open that up. So in the past, awesome, Children's Miracle Network Hospitals, great. Here's a group. As a group, if people raise certain tiers of money, that has historically unlocked things, and individual incentives have historically unlocked things for you. So for instance, last year, if you donated at least 50 money units, you got a code for a Sleeping Gray Cat, along with picks from the community loot list. And you sort of, yes, all incentives were cumulative last year. And so that's probably what it's going to be similar to this year, but that'll be released here in the coming weeks. And so not only are you donating money to a charitable cause, which in the US might be beneficial to your taxes, though probably not after the rejiggered things, but more importantly is helping children, and might get you your own bardic fiddle, for instance. Awesome. Okay. We'll just move that over here. So, switch into German, switch into French, get the Anthem names that are currently in use, stop using the ones that aren't in use, all of those things. That change looks like this in line. So, the bonus that you get from using your major perfect ballad, changed. It used to give you a decreased power cost buff, which was only very rarely useful. I think a lot of people did not bother with that, given that Minstrels generally don't have much power conservation issue. So now it's an incoming healing bonus instead. And the name of that buff changed for every single language. So pick that up, don't forget to pick that up, and then come on in to the various anthems. Now the war seeds I don't think have changed, and I don't have a war seed on Treebeard to check, so that's fine. And then everything under the 2020 Minstrel revamp is, funnily enough, not yet really localized into German or French. They're still using the German and French names for the anthems that were already in place. And so we have things like Anthem 1 Resonance and Compassion sitting on top of Dritten Zeitalter's Resonance and Mitgefühls. And so you can see how you would expect this to be Anthem 1, Resonance, and Mitgefühls, and it's not. And so those haven't been fully localized yet. I hope that that's coming, and they just didn't want to delay the full release of 33.2, waiting for these localizations to happen. But in the meantime, we just have to match what they are. We don't have to worry about what they will be. Someday they'll change. We'll just incorporate those in. And so we are not using it yet, but it's also useful to know what those personal buffs are that come from 2 of the 3 lesser anthems. That's actually easier to look at if we come on into the English one. The personal anthems, of Resonance and Dissonance give you a personal buff that is different from the Fellowship-wide buff. The Fellowship-wide buff can be refreshed with either a lesser or greater of that anthem type. The personal buff only comes from using that personal anthem. And so, for instance, game-wise, that means once you have the lesser Anthem 2 Dissonance and the greater Anthem 2 War, you're going to always want to refresh that with Dissonance. Keep your hands off the War button. It does not give you that personal buff, and Dissonance does, and refreshes the combination Dissonance and War also. So you always want to use that Dissonance. Cool, okay. So what else do we have of interest here? We added the French and German strings, great. Move forward. We updated icons, yes, love it. This is a case of, these icons changed. And so if we come into MinstrelBuff and come look at these fixed, and actually, no, I've hit the wrong button. Okay. Let's go ahead and increase the size of the main window. We'll scale it on up. This will reveal a different bug, but that's a problem for another day. Okay, so we can see in the background of the fixed themes, the goal of which is to always put the same anthem in the same place and give you a heads-up display of which anthems you don't have the buff for. I think that'd be very interesting for a group that runs with multiple minstrels, where you can have coverage from different lines, blue line and red line, for instance. But several of these icons were incorrect. For instance, this icon on the left was for an anthem that is no longer in use. The fourth icon over was changing the icon based on your stance, except that was under the assumption that you could only have the benefit of one of these. That was the icon for Anthem of the Third Age, wasn't it? Which is no more. Anyway, the background icons were all wrong, and so the goal was to come through these fixed anthems and do something about that. Any other fixed ones? Yeah, like that. And so, grab screenshots of those icons, desaturate them out to make them pretty much grayscale, and bring them on in. And let's see. All right, we've updated there. Let's unload, reload. Great. And that makes us gives us things that look more like this. Now, in the new system, you can have a lesser one, a greater one, or a combination of lesser and greater one, but you can never have both lesser and greater. They merge into a single combined icon, and the aesthetics of that icon look pretty similar. The combination one just feels like it pulls a little bit from both. So we go ahead and indicate. At this point, you could have a lesser one or a greater one, but you don't have either. A lesser two or a greater one, you don't have either, and so on. Three, either. And then you have the Anthem of the Free Peoples, which does not use that mechanic, and something I didn't realize at first, probably just there was so much new information. The lesser anthems, you only need one ballad active to use, and you have to be in combat. The greater anthems, you have to have two ballads active and be in combat. And the Anthem of the Free People, you do have to have all three ballads active and be in combat. And so I hope that's a good anthem. Farathan, welcome. Farathan, assuming it's the same name on Twitter, I saw that picture of the video of your cat. It's so cute. I hope your cat enjoys today's as well. And you. Yeah, mostly the cat. So that was the idea. Come through these fixed themes and fix the icons, which has been sort of in the back of my head as a problem for a long time, but also now we can only have up to 4 Anthem icons. This used to have 6, right? If we step backwards in time and come on back in here, there were 6 spots for anthems, even though technically you could have 8 different ones with the variations on Anthem of the Third Age. We don't need all of those anymore, and that's actually very nice from a design standpoint. So we can step forward in time here, unload and reload, and now we've only got we only need the space for these 4. Awesome. And we can come look at the various fixed anthems like this, and it was the same thing for all of them. Use those icons in place of the other ones. Cut off the right side when there were more than 4 spaces. Oh yeah, we have a Casper. So far, Casper has not gotten up on the desk to paw at the screen, but he's adapting to being in this new home. So we'll see. Maybe someday. Okay. Anything else that was... Oops. Can't use the up button there. Yeah, okay. So that was what was going on in this one, is updating the icons in the fixed anthems. And we can see, thanks to the previous change of moving the files into specific folders, that this was window fixed anthem, no window fixed anthem, and note fixed anthems, and their corresponding theme files as well, because those specified how big is this image that's being used in the background. Awesome. So, at that point, I was pretty much ready, I thought, to make a release of MinstrelBuff. All these changes since the end of the stream, some of them more complicated than others, some of them just requiring digging through the code to figure out which icons go to which theme. But that was the time at which I said, wait a sec, if this is going to be a Cube plugins MinstrelBuff II and not just a patch, and I felt like that was a good enough time to rip that band-aid off, then let's get it moved on over into Cube plugins, which will involve updating a whole bunch of paths. And so, first of all, yes, committing every single file new here, because it's never been seen in this repository. This might be a nicer way to do this, but I moved the files over, renamed some stuff, and started it. what next? Next, it was time to fix some little things, startup messages, commands, and oh yes, there was this fascinating problem where there was a function, and this probably was introduced once upon a time when you couldn't just ask Lotro what's the version of the plugin because it didn't exist at the time. So they go through the list of all the available plugins, find the first one that's called MinstrelBuff, and get that one's version. And MinstrelBuff sorts before MinstrelBuff II, so it was always showing the wrong version. So I had to replace that one with a simple plugin get version, which is available during plugin startup. Let's see. Had some README changes. Oh yeah, I found an image that wasn't being used. Awesome, get rid of it. Because again, the more files we can get rid of, the fewer files that'll just sit around in people's plugin folders never being used because they were deleted on my end, but you can't deploy a deletion. Rename some files. Awesome. Oh yes, there was a problem where you moved the buff window and the overlay window, working around that bug that we saw where skill shortcuts kind of are on top of everything. Except if it's in another window. So you'd move the window and the overlays didn't move. That was a fun little bug. And then the documents. What are we telling people about it? What image are we capturing? All of those things. And then, oops, forgot to update a path here. Forgot to update a path here. So a quick secondary release. And then here we are. We have that release document. So that kind of catches us up to the present. Fairthen says, I think you can change so much more in MinstrelBuff II because it's your version. I hope so. I didn't feel too restrained with what things I could try to add. I just felt restrained because there's no currently graceful way to install a plugin patch for a person who doesn't feel comfortable with downloading a zip file and extracting files and putting them in the right place and, oops, I made a mistake and what do I do now, right? I'm sure there's so many people out there who like using plugins because the Lotro plugin Compendium makes it easy, right? You just come in here, you add a new plugin by searching for MinstrelBuff, and you just click the MinstrelBuff II and you install it, right? I'm going to try not to do that because I don't want to overwrite any files that I have right now. So I'm sure click and go, as Little Redhead says it there, is going to be what most people need in their life. And so opening it up as a plugin instead of a patch feels like it extends an olive branch to those people who otherwise aren't going to use a patch and says you can just one-click install, super easy. I hope you enjoy it. And we can see so far 564 people have downloaded it. Awesome. I hope they're all enjoying it. And there's of course problems with it. There's always going to be problems with it. And I'll just try to keep making it a little bit better as time goes on. Awesome. Now, there's also 13 changes. Oh, okay. We're in the Cube plugins domain, so there are some changes from other plugins that I haven't gotten around to yet. One of these days. All right. So we have some to-do file additions, some thoughts for the future, some bugs. Awesome. We have stuff in settings. Okay, this was actually something that happened in the original MinstrelBuff, I think at least once, and then caught me out here as well. So if we come over to the Lotro interface, and come on down to MinstrelBuff, and this is actually really neat. There's a scroller on the right here that just kind of most recent first, what things have changed over on Lotro interface. And since last week, MinstrelBuff II was released, we've had an update on Alcoholic, Prime Plugin, and PVMP Plus Revisited. So neat. Love seeing some motion in the plugins there. So, coming on in here, a person reported... Hey, it's a Fairthen. Hello, Fairthen. A person reported an error message, which is to say, when trying to load a theme, the theme was nil, and so the whole thing just blew up and it didn't work. And this happens during plugin load, which means there's no fixing it, right? The plugin just can't load. And so this was a thing that I meant to do on the original, because the problem existed in the original, that sometimes that theme number just gets corrupted for some reason. I'm guessing it was bad in the save file, or the save file itself was bad in some way. And so this block of code needed to check that number after it got loaded in from the file to say, is this reasonable? Is it at least 1? Is it less than the number of things we've got in that list? And if not, set it to 1 and write the file back out. And if it is in that range, between 1 and that maximum number inclusive, awesome. Don't worry about it. Okay, so yes, that is sitting here. Let's go ahead and fix the theme value if it isn't in the range of 1.n. Okay, let's go ahead and do that. And then we have some to-do changes. Awesome. So we're back to a clean working directory. The only thing we've got is our options show debug options equals true, and that's going to enable some debug options in the UI in the options window. Excellent. Let's go ahead and unscale this. Scale it on back down to, say, 2 times, and slide that on over to the right here so it's more visible. All right, not that. And let's minimize that down a little bit. Okay, so that's sort of a whirlwind tour of after we finished last week, what did it take to get this into a state where I was able to release it into the world, where, again, now like 500 people have downloaded it. That's pretty cool. I hope they're enjoying it. I hope more people who were using Minstrel buffs keep using it. Now, I know there's other things out there that people might prefer, like buff bars, and that's totally fine. Like, I just happen to like this all Minstrels all the time in one place aspect of the plugin. But if you use a different plugin to track your ballads or anthems or whatnot, more power to you. Like that's a very fine and legitimate choice to make. Okay, so what are we going to do now? Well, I thought we might take a look at what things still remain and kind of prioritize them. So, Minstrel, 3 thoughts. Furthen says, buff bars can't do the same things as MinstrelBuff II. Someone else says, I made it. I thought I would miss this. Well, welcome into chat, though you may want to give some thoughts to your username. Okay, so what are we going to do here? Yes. Redhead says, committed playing Lotro for another 10 years, hashtag rumors. Who can say? Hashtag before rumors. Who can say? I have played MMOs in the past, and sometimes it sticks, and sometimes I get distracted by life. All right, so, Minstrel 3 thoughts. What do we have? A thing that I would like, and let's see, we do not have. I'm tempted to maybe drag Rosenbloom somewhere where there are enemies to engage and put us into combat. How about Harndirian? I hear there's some half-orcs harassing them in the low-lying plains. Berlin, I haven't tried to make buff bars do the same things as Minstrel buff. Why would I've already got Minstrel buff? But I would hope that with the very specific things that we're looking for, we can do more specific things for Minstrels than a generic let's track buffs plugin might be able to do. So I definitely can't say for sure that we do more, but maybe. All right, so this is we're still in the fixed mode. I think actually let's drop on down to the standard and overcome a little bit of a bug there. Okay. So, there seems to be a bug in switching themes right now. Oh, and also that's the old one. Haha! So, Little Red will stick out of combat until I die. That's excellent. So, this is a not great aspect is that you can technically have both minstrel buffs active at the same time. And it's easy enough to forget that you still have the old one set to autoload. So watch out for that. They both use the same save file, and so you should, as we just saw there, the one loaded right on top of the other. So if I load minstrel buff and then load the other minstrel buff, they're going to load on top of each other. You might not even realize it's happened, but it's not optimal. So I would recommend don't do that. So just make sure you only load the one of them. Okay. So the first thing that I would like is a UI that kind of says the next anthem in your previously stated priority list is blah, and just puts that in a little window near this main buff window. We're going to go ahead and remove those quests, although they're just going to repopulate. For me, the first thing I want to have active is the Lesser Anthem 2 Dissonance. So that would be in the window. Now that it's active, the window would change, and the next thing that I really want on this character is Greater Anthem 2 War. I can't do that for another 20 seconds because of the 25-second cooldown, but that's what I would like next. Is I would want a little window that has War and its 5-second remaining cooldown. Just tick it on down here. And so that I can know, oops, I don't want to get out of combat. Okay, now I can go ahead and land that, get out of combat, we're good. Because again, muscle memory is driving me crazy. I'm so used to getting out of combat and then immediately refreshing the 3 anthems that I used in Redline because you had just enough time to do that in your 9-second out of combat timer. Now, maybe you get back into combat, maybe you don't, but the point is, by the time you do the next combat, your anthems have been rebuffed. Was a minimum of 1 minute, and now could be easily gotten up to 2 minutes with legendary item traceries. Okay, so, and again, we have here a cooldown on that buff. We're below 25 seconds. So if I want this to be refreshed, and assuming I have 25-second cooldown on my anthems, this needs to be the next thing I do. I can't do anything else, or I won't have time to come back around and refresh this before it's gone. So I want the pop-up to say, you really need to do the Lesser Anthem 2 Dissonance now. Now that Dissonance and War are active, I want that window to show Composure. I would love to get a third anthem out here. Oh, hey, I am a little low. I guess I should eat some food or something. Actually, hang on a second. Plugins. Who does the buff bars or the buff monitor? Let's come take a look at that. If we come search for buff monitor, that's P Tweety. Great. That's the only problem I have with these things going out by name of the person, is then I forget who did that. All right, we're gonna go ahead and load buff monitor, which is something I find very helpful. I am gonna go ahead and move that on up though. For me, I just can't track which foods, let's see, is that visible? Nope, it's under my face. That's okay. For me, I can't track which foods are on cooldown. It just never sticks. So with this, I can go ahead and have a little heads-up display of which of the buffs that I care about are active or are not active, and if they are active, how much time do I have left on them. For me, this is my preferred option. Again, I think there's other things out there like buff bars that will give you this information. But here's what you want to track and here's how much time's left on them feels very easy for me to set up on buff monitor, and so I just stick with it. I'm sure there's multiple ways to solve that particular problem. All right, we don't actually need works except for the quest. All right. Cool. I love some repeatables. Okay. Oh, now it's on top of, oh well, it's fine. I'll just move that over here. So for something especially like Bjorn's honey cakes that expire after 5 minutes, I need this plugin or else I just forget. And for me, I just cannot look at the icons over here, your buffs underneath your character bar, and know which one is which. I mean, yes, they are distinct between trail food, fortifying food, and cooked food, although both of the cooked foods are the same. Farathan in chat says Buff Monitor has an advantage over buff bars. You can sort the effects yourself. Buff Monitors only displays the debuffs in my game. Nice. Yeah, and from what I hear, buff bars can do a tremendous amount, so it might be able to do this exact same thing. But do we need those? We don't. I'll take that Kazad though. So we have an Anthem. We have an Anthem with 40 seconds left. And so, again, I want that UI to pop up and say the next thing you want to activate, because you've got the lesser, is you want that greater. That does require me to have the 2 ballads, and bam, lesser and greater. What I envision is that the UI pops up and says, okay, the next one is going to be Lesser Anthem 3 Composure. But there's only a 10-second window where that will show up, because we've got this 25-second cooldown in Anthems. They only last a minute for me. And so 35 seconds into that 1 minute duration for this Anthem is when I'm going to be able to do this Anthem of Lesser Anthem Composure. And now I've got 25 seconds left on Anthem 2 Dissonance and War. I have to do that next. All right, and so that's where I think a UI is going to be very helpful. What is this? Oh, I got a quest item. A symbol of the past. Yeah, we can take that to Mention, but not today. That'll be a this weekend thing. We're too far south. The half-orcs are on the other side of this hill. The half-orcs kind of stretch between Lonak and Harndirian, and you get too far south, you start, dealing with undead and dog-looking things. I forget their names. Lots of red dots here. Awesome. So now as I'm musing about what to do, now we can see we waited too long and the main Anthem that I care about expired, so that would be the first one in the window. Even though the Anthem 3 Composure is about to expire, I'm willing to let that expire in order to get the other anthems that I care about more. So priority list, that'll be in the options screen, but of MinstrelBuff II, not Buff Monitor. So it'll be here in the options somewhere. It might be worth having another tab eventually, but for now it'll just be lower down in this window. And based on that, based on which of the anthems you know, and based on which of the anthems are out and have a cooldown of longer than 25 seconds, I want to populate the here's your best next anthem button, which will hang out somewhere on screen where it's big and noticeable, and I will not miss the short window I have to get these anthems out. Once you have the Lesser and Greater 2 and the Lesser 3, you just need to alternate between them. But you do need to do that pretty consistently because you want that personal buff from the Lesser Anthem Dissonance to show up. And that plus 20% cry and call damage has a cooldown of 1 minute. And so you do need to keep on bouncing back and forth between them. The simple solution is just once you've got Lesser and Greater 2 up, you just only do Lesser Anthem Dissonance every 30 or 40 seconds and call it a day. But if you want to experience those resistance ratings from Composure, then you gotta be playing the Anthem game and bouncing back and forth between them. And that's where I'm hoping this idea that I'm sketching out is going to come into play. It's going to just make it obvious. You got to do it now. You got to do it now. You ran out of time. Okay. But regardless, you definitely have to do the Lesser 2 now because the really important one's going to go away. Cool. Okay. Now the other thing that needs to take into account is how long does it take for an anthem to actually clear as far as this cooldown. So 1001, 1002. But I think you can start that just before, you need the effect to land before the other one expires. This is a point. I'm about to sneeze. Excuse me. Okay, so yes, this anthem is going to expire in 30 seconds. So the real question is, if I start another anthem at like 1 second remaining, my guess is it takes about 2 seconds to clear the anthem animation. So if I start at 1 second, I'm guessing I'm not going to maintain this Anthem 2 Dissonance and War effect. But that's something I want to take into account here. So I'm just going to let this orc beat on me, so I'm definitely in combat. 3, 2, 1. Interesting. So it took less time, and of course that effect went away and was replaced by an identical effect. It took less than the 2 seconds. So I guess the next question is, if we let it get down to almost 0. Actually, does it have to go to 0, or does it have to get to past 0? That's another question we can answer. All right. When a redhead says, new mini style, I was defeated because I was letting them shoot me, but I needed to wait for my anthem. I have in our group play actually dialed back my damage in an instance that we were in, because like, oh, it's kind of a long run to the next one. Let me just not contribute. Okay, bam, new anthem, and let's go. I have totally done that. Okay, 2, 1, 0. Okay, so if you wait until it basically hits 0, and then click the wrong button. All right, that was a faulty test right there. Fairthan asks, did I understand it correctly that you'll add another window for the recommendation? That is my current thought, is that I don't think there's really a place for it that I want to put it here in the UI. So that's sort of my initial thought is, let's just add a window. Maybe it's a window that sticks with this window, so it's always like attached to it, so you don't have to move it separately, maybe. But regardless, if you wanted to be in a different place, I think that'd be really good. So automatically sticking them maybe doesn't make sense. Then we'll have 3 windows for one plugin. I think you're forgetting the melodic interlude window. That'd be a 4th window. Yeah, that's the only problem is at a certain point you have to ask what's going on here. Okay, so refreshing when it got to basically -1, definitely too late. I got distracted there, I'm afraid. Let me go ahead and pop this on up. Fairthan says perhaps you could include it somewhere. Yeah, and I think that'd be the kind of thing where, again, option checkboxes for what it shows up in the UI. On the one hand, it's like, just pick something and go with it. But on the other hand, I want to give people a little bit of control. So like these overlays that say lesser, and greater, some people probably don't need those and would probably find it really annoying. So I do want to have an option that says, don't use them. That's totally fine. What do we care? I know, that's so funny. I had an issue where these overlays weren't showing up, and so I noted it as a bug, but I wonder if I just had the wrong plugin loaded. I'm not sure. Well, even the old plugin had those. Okay, 1. No! I had a ballad going. Okay, so we're going to want to include a possible fudge number of, let's say, 25 seconds plus 1 to 2 seconds to account for the amount of time. So that if you get down to exactly 25 seconds, it's already too late for that second anthem. 27 seconds, you gotta start at least 27 seconds ahead, that kind of thing. And then we'll include that as a variable, so if we want to include a little bit more or a little less time, we'll be able to do that pretty easily and pretty sensibly. Okay, so that's what I'm all about. A UI that shows available anthems. You can click on sort of by which one expires next. I mean, that's tempting, but at a certain point, maybe just the next anthem in your priority. Or just the one anthem that is, quote, next. I think a UI that shows all of the anthems that you have trained is probably unnecessary, and definitely more work than I want to do right now. So UIs that shows the next anthem in your priority queue. So not sorted at all. So options to set your anthem cooldown. Okay, yep. Change anthem timers to yellow red. That's not actually a part of this UI. Let me shove that on down. Other anthem changes. Yeah. And you know, I thought maybe just only show this UI when an anthem is available, but I almost think I'd rather have the UI always there and that way you can you have this possibly big in front of your face scalable thing that says it's going to expire, it's going to expire. Click the thing. Moobot has put into chat, don't forget, not only do we have, whoa, hey, an orc attacking us. Thanks, Moobot. Not only do we have a code for a universal solvent in chat there, go ahead and go into the store, click on redeem code, type craft solve. I should be copy pasting. I always say to copy paste. That gets you a universal solvent. Awesome. I'll toss that into my carry-all later. Don't also forget to use the free Quests 2022 code to unlock a lot of the stuff that's a little bit older content-wise. And you can use that on whatever accounts you have. Okay, great. Okay. Neat. So, options to set your Anthem cooldown time. For me, it's 25, but if you have enough, trait points to spend, or spend a lot of them in yellow, you can bring that down to 20, one step at a time, 24 through 20. So we definitely want to be able to have that. I don't think there's an easy way. Actually, we might be able to tell when an Anthem changes what its cooldown is, and so this might be auto-detectable. This might be auto-detectable. But we'll start with just assuming it's 25 for me, and plus, remember to do +2 for the how much time is left calculation, and then the Anthem cooldown time might be auto-detectable. We'll come back to that. Okay, that would be very nice, but we'll still want one for when the Anthem hasn't cooled down yet as a starting point. That keeps changing when you switch stances, though, so not sure. Maybe we just wait for the first time an Anthem cools down, and if it's different from 25, or different from the current value, which will default to 25, okay, I like that better. If Anthem cooldown time is detectable, start setting at 25, update first time Anthem cools down. Okay. If it isn't, then add an option to set your Anthem cooldown time default to 25. That's probably good enough for that. Okay. Anything else? Show the UI all the time. Maybe optionally when the Anthem cooldown expires. Question mark. Deal with the orc. Deal with the explosion. Awesome. Thanks, orc. Okay. Maybe optionally when the Anthem cooldown expires, starting with visible. This is again one of those things where add another option to the UI or versus just make a decision. But for me, I think having that UI visible all the time might be good. But I'll have to play with it a little bit and see. Maybe it'd be more useful if it pops into existence when you can do the thing. And if it's not there, you know, if there's 20 seconds left on the Anthem, maybe it doesn't need to be there. Maybe it'll just be visual noise. Okay, overlay. Okay, that was mostly done. It feels pretty much done. We'll keep an eye out for bugs, but we're going to move that down. All right, fixed themes. Collapse 1, 2, and 3 into single icons. Done. These icons embedded in the background. Done. Awesome. And there were some other Minstrel 3.0 ideas. That's got to come pretty soon. In fact, let's bump that up to first. I don't need it for this stream because I don't have any other plugins really going, except I did have plugins going. I do. I've got buff bars. And so having the ability to reload the Anthem, or reload the plugin, just very handy. Especially during my normal playtime, when sometimes I want to fix a bug, but then I've got, I don't know, 10 different plugins running, and that's annoying to have to unload one. Actually, that's a good question. The plugins unload MinstrelBuff. MinstrelBuff II. MinstrelBuff II. I'm guessing the MinstrelBuff plugin doesn't include. Oh, it does not include an apartment. Great. That's part of the problem. Making it unloadable, at least by having an apartment, will be a big help. Cool. So there's the priority queue. It's improved Inspire Fellows. Farathan, I think, tossed out there in chat. It's not highest. No, inner strength. It's not highest on my list. My highest on the list is Anthem management. Is just make it simple for me. Let me click a button when it's time to click a button, or at least remind me that I can click a button and I'll just click the corresponding key. That's fine too. Okay. So, let's get going. We're only an hour into this. Let's actually get some changes. First thing first, add in a reload mechanism. Now, the first thing we can do is look at a plugin that already has this. So, if we come in to the deed tracker.plugin, we can see there is an apartment. And this is a useful thing for debugging purposes. It's all, but it does require, cause your plugin to consume more memory. In theory, I believe what it does is Lotro will load a separate set of the Lua state, the API state, global variables, and all that just for your plugin. Now, that isolates you from other plugins. Cool. That means that your plugin can be unloaded, or your set of plugins can be unloaded. Cool. It means more memory taken. Oh, works. They're starting to respawn. Thanks. I guess we could go walk over the road until I'm ready to attack more. Or you can attack them.
I just stripped them.
Yeah. Alright, let's go walk over to the Great North or South Road. Farathan asks, will you unify the colors for all the functions if something is ending? White equals active, yellow / red equals 5 seconds left, red / yellow, regaining the fight, just for examples. Yeah, I could see some color unification. That's something that I like having is these color changes, like we do with the auto combat timer. So we start with 9 seconds, that's white, and I wanted to give some sort of visual indication that, oh, we're approaching, wearing out, and then the red fills in just to show you how much time is left on the refill. And so red there isn't really used to show, oh, you're really almost out. So I think that's a good point. Where did I talk about colors? To yellow. Close to timing out. Good point, Farathan. I would just use yellow to show that we're getting close to timing out. And I would try to skip the red. Cleaner water, more memory, mwahaha. It is a point that I don't actually know how much memory is used, just kind of an empty plugin that is just a separate apartment but doesn't have anything by itself. I think this is testable. I think you can do a memory check from a plugin to see how much memory is being used. And then load another plugin and then check again how much memory is being used. So I think this is a testable thing, and I would hope that we're talking about on the order of megabytes, right? Half a meg, that we're not talking about 20 megs for each apartment. So I think in the sense of modern computers that have hopefully gigabytes to spare of memory, if all you're doing is playing a full screen game, as opposed to maybe you're playing a full screen game and you're recording it to drive, and you're streaming it out to the world, and you're looking up things on websites, right? Different needs. But if it takes like on the order of a half to 5 megabytes, then I'm pretty comfortable just saying, yeah, the plugin just takes more memory. If it takes 20 megabytes, I'd feel awkward about that. So that's a thing to do, I guess, at some point. But for testing purposes, super easy. And this is a revertible change. This .plugin file gets laid down each time we do an installation. And so if it's a mistake, we can always undo it. Okay. Let's see. Let's go ahead and copy this configuration apartment line. We're going to go ahead and lay it down after package. And welcome to chat, Lunar Water. So, anyone who's interested in doing Lotro plugins, you can use Visual Studio Code. It's a free tool, and with that, you should definitely download the extension Lotro API and put out into the community by Lunar Water. It's great. It offers IntelliSense for Lotro-specific parts of the API. It's fantastic. All right, let's go ahead and lay this down as we did. Now, we do want the apartment to be different. Now, that is a thing you can do. You can use the same apartment for all of your plugins, but when you are using an apartment to unload plugins, you don't unload plugins, you unload apartments. So if you have multiple plugins in the same apartment, they all get unloaded when you unload the apartment. That might be a good choice, especially if you have a suite of plugins. You could imagine like a Titan bar being a combination of multiple plugins to do everything it does. But if you have multiple disparate plugins, like I have Deed Tracker and I have MinstrelBuff, they don't really do the same thing. So putting them in the same apartment would feel like a mistake. So, MinstrelBuff. Now, the original MinstrelBuff did not use an apartment, so I don't have to worry about accidentally conflicting with that. I do have to just make the choice, do I want it to be MinstrelBuff, MinstrelBuff II? But this is the thing that you will type when you want to unload a plugin. So if I name it MinstrelBuff II, I have to use that every time I type /plugins space unload space blah. And so in this case, I wouldn't want to do that. Now I'm wondering, can I make use of that? Plugins unload MinstrelBuff. I could not. Let's go ahead and unload and reload so that it is in its own apartment. And now it can be unloaded. So, plugins state script MinstrelBuff has been loaded. And then if you do a /plugins load, you're doing it based on the name that's in the plugin manager. So quote MinstrelBuff space II space, and that loads it. So that's why you'll sometimes find it very frustrating to be like, how do I load or unload this thing? They use different names. To load it, you use the name in the plugin manager, MinstrelBuff II. To unload it, you use the name of the apartment, which doesn't have to be the same, often isn't. So it's a thing to watch out for. Now, I could also go ahead and say apartment MinstrelBuff II. Then when it's loaded, I could go ahead and say plugins unload MinstrelBuff II. The problem is that doesn't behave well if there's a space in the name. You notice it didn't unload. You can... I don't know if you can even fix that. Plugin state 2 cannot be unloaded. It is plugin 2. So if I do let's see. How do you even install plugins? What a great question. Let me go ahead and finish mulling over this, and I will answer that. Plugins load MinstrelBuff II with a space, and unload doesn't work. And so it's very usual for us to not put a space here. Okay, Fairthan has linked to Lotro plugin Compendium. Excellent link. It's exactly what I was going to suggest. So plugins are easily found on the Lotro interface page. This is lotrointerface.com. And you can just browse plugins here, click on downloads, and you'll find a bunch of different ways to find them. Lotro standalone plugins. So if you're looking for something for a Minstrel, for instance, class-specific Minstrel, and you'll find MinstrelBuff II, the plugin that we're currently working on, as an example. You might be looking for other things, in which case you'll find a whole bunch of awesome things. In fact, let's go ahead and stick the exclamation point plugins command into chat there. That'll link you to the Lotro plugin Compendium, which is a very handy UI that you can download, and done by community member Lunar Water, and you can just search for a plugin. So for instance, if I wanted to install, what's a fun one? Emac also asked, if I want to use plugins, would I have to type commands like that? Often not. Let's go ahead and first show the installation. So for instance, Travel Window 2 is a very common plugin, especially for classes like Hunters or Wardens? Do they muster? I think so. Well, anyone who has a lot of travel skills. And let's go ahead and add that. You click the one you want to install, you click the Add button, and it'll download it and put it where it needs to go. Excellent. Backtrack, you're new, no problems. So if we go ahead and go to that link that both Moobot and Ferrothan put into chat, you'll see the Lotro plugin Compendium. This is a third-party program that you can put on your computer. So go ahead and click download. It'll download as a zip file. You can show that. Great. Cool, we have a zip file. You can go ahead and extract that. If you're on Windows, you can usually just right-click and say extract. And within that, you will see an installation program, plugin compendium setup.msi. Run that, and it will install on your computer. As a general warning, be cautious about installing random computers that you see, random programs that you see out in the world. This one, as far as I can tell, is not malicious, but some of them can be. So be a little bit cautious when someone just tells you to download and run some random program. You do not have to use this to do plugins in Lotro. It just makes it easier, super easier. So that is how you would install this. Download the zip file, pull the files out of the zip file. That's called extracting. And then you can run the setup file, or just directly the plugin compendium setup.msi. Once you've done that, you're going to have this program called Lotro plugin compendium. Neat. It will, by default, show you the plugins you have installed. If you don't have any installed, it's obviously not going to show you any. And it will also have a tab to add new plugins. So let me step back a second. And oh, hang on, gonna work. Cool. Okay, so if we come on into our documents, Lord of the Rings Online plugins, we're gonna go ahead and nix that Travel Window 2 for a minute. Awesome. So when it's time to install a plugin, maybe you've heard, hey, it's great, Travel Window 2 is awesome, you should install it. Cool. We're going to click that. Now that we have Lotro plugin compendium installed, and if I'm still going too fast, no worries. You can always click back into time or come back and view the recording later and walk through it. You can also just shoot us messages for further help. But okay, it's time to install a plugin. We have Lotro plugin compendium. It's going to help us out. I've searched for travel. Someone said Travel Window 2 is really cool. I click it and I press the Add button. That's going to download and install the plugin where it needs to go. Awesome. If for some reason things aren't working, there is a configuration tab. It seems to work by default pretty well for me, so only go to the configuration if something is not working. That's all you need to do to install the plugin. But in-game, to get to the plugin manager, there's a little caret menu down here, just below my face. There's a little caret menu, and you can hover over System and go to Plugin Manager. You can also, for example, type /plugins /manager, but you don't have to. You can just go to the caret menu, hover over System, and click Plugin Manager. And remember, if you were already running Lotro at the time, click that little green arrow here to refresh your list of plugins. And now I have Travel Window 2 here. Okay. So we can go ahead and load Travel Window 2. It's going to take it a minute. Awesome. And most plugins will put a little icon on the screen that you can use to interact with them. So for instance, where's the travel window icon? There it is. Okay, so the travel window icon is a little suitcase. Yeah, it's cute, right? It's a little travel. And it's got the little luggage tag on it and everything. And when you aren't hovering over it, it just goes a little opaque, which is lovely when you're used to it, but then when you're trying to find the thing, it can be a little bit frustrating. So for me, I already had travel window installed, and so it knew that I wanted the travel window down here in the bottom left, because that's just an easy place for me. It may start in the center of the screen if you've never had it before. And clicking this gets you the travel window, left-clicking this. If you right-click on it, or if you're left-handed, probably primary and secondary mouse buttons. So if you right-click on it, you're going to have some options. You can click on options to open up the window. You can't find the program. When you say you can't find the program, if you mean the Lotro plugin compendium, once you've installed it, you might be able to find it on your start menu. I have it pinned to the start menu underneath my face there because I use it so often. But you might go to your start menu and type plugin, and you might find plugin compendium that way. Oh, I can see the extra life things are on top of my menu there. So go here, type in plugin. Cool, plugin compendium is installed on my computer. Awesome. So that's sort of a whirlwind tour. And again, if that's too fast, no worries. You can reach out to me for a little bit of a more hands-on assistance. You can email lotrodtracker@gmail.com. That bounces its way over to me. There are also numerous community Lotro Discord servers that might help with specific issues as well. So a lot of plugins have a UI, user interface element, where you can get attacked by a warg and then click on them to open up the interface. So for me, I click this button, the window pops up. Awesome. I right click on it, I can go to options, all the options pop up. So typing in commands into chat can be a faster way to interact with a plugin, but most plugins, the whole point of them is to be a user interface of some way. And so most plugins, you don't have to do that. You just can do that if it makes things faster or better for you. I hope that kind of answered your question. All right, Valkyria in chat says, hello, also noob here, started the day before yesterday. Well, welcome. Lord of the Rings Online is a lot of fun. I enjoy it, and if you have any desire to know about plugins, you are also in the right place. Every once in a while in the background here, I do go out and defeat an orc or something, but the whole point I'm here is to talk about plugins. Little Redhead says, just to walk back a little, the LotroInterface.com website has a large list of plugins that people have submitted for use. The Plugin Compendium is a separate tool, program, that you can get at Lotro's interface, at LotroInterface.com, and makes getting and installing plugins way easier. Absolutely, great clarification. And Little Redhead says, B4 knows all the things you type in as shortcuts. I hardly ever use that, and click on the plugins like he was just showing. Oh. Emac says, to be clear, I'm a noob in plugins. I've been playing Lotro for 12 to 13 years. Awesome. Then the only thing you new in the plugin, the UI that you need to know about is the caret arrow hover over system is a way to get you to your plugin manager. You probably know that you can reassign these buttons down here to the left and right of your skill bar. So, for instance, I know Little Redhead has reassigned one of these buttons, maybe her Gandalf button. Maybe she doesn't like Gandalf. No, Next thing I know? Okay, her character screen. Yeah, for me, I forget that character screen button is there, and so I just hit C. It's super easy, right? And so you can come on in to your options, and somewhere in there, in your UI settings, you can change character to plugins, plugin manager. And if you do that, now you just have a button to open and close that plugin manager. Awesome. I'll put it back to character for right now. Yeah, it sounds really handy. Little Redhead would never overwrite Gandalf. Fair. So yeah, if you find yourself underusing one of these shortcuts, maybe the character panel, maybe the quest log, maybe the deeds, the social panel, crafting, or system menu. I wouldn't recommend rebinding the system menu. But you can always get to it with escape, but escape also closes other windows, and so it's sometimes useful just to be able to, like, I need that, but not all my stuff to close. But yeah, if you don't use one of those, bind it to your plugin, or just use system, plugin manager, or type/plugins space manager, whatever. Once you're in here, you can use the load button to load a specific plugin. You can use the unload button, unload all button to unload all plugins. There's no UI way to unload a specific plugin because reasons. And then once a plugin is loaded, many of them come with about information and options. Oh, weird. Wait, are you going right to left or left to right?
Center out.
Oh, okay, from some center out. So Little Red Head goes Gandalf, Lua plugin manager, reputation panel.
Yep.
What?
Yeah.
And then default. Oh, and then the rest of them are normal.
Yeah.
Okay, I can see that. Having to go through your character screen for reputation is a bit of a two-step process, and you can definitely simplify that.
The character screen is behind the other stuff. When you pulled up your character.
My character screen is behind other stuff. So character reputation buttons at reputation buttons at the bottom, and yeah, I could see bypassing that, making it a single step. All right, Squirrel, I need to be in combat with something to launch an Anthem. Sorry about that. Okay, awesome. Emac asks, Gandalf? Yeah, if you look at the very bottom here next to your sword icon that indicates whether you're auto-attacking or not, the first character there kind of looks like a Gandalf. It's definitely, it's your traits panel. It looks to me like it's a simplified version of Wisdom, but it's a little bit more different than Wisdom. So, I think it's a specific. Alright, that wolf is a little bit too close to us. We're going to go ahead and activate our Greater Anthem here. Awesome. So, Emac, I would recommend to get familiar with plugins a little bit, pick a plugin that sounds useful. Travel Window is a great choice, and try to get it installed. If you're installing it manually, you can always download these things and put it into place. The first one can be a little bit tricky because Lotro is looking for a very specific location for these plugins. If you're able to use the plugin Compendium, then that will make life a little bit easier. It'll automatically create the folder if it needs to, put the stuff where it needs to go. And then just you'll have a single plugin in your list. You can load it, you can unload it, you can play around with having that plugin in a game that you already are familiar with. And once you are comfortable with all plugin, then you can just, the sky's the limit. You can add as many as you want, play around with them. You can, in the plugin manager, go ahead and use the automatically load for to select specific characters that a plugin will automatically turn on for when you log in. A plugin has to be loaded for you to use the plugin. And so, for instance, in MinstrelBuff II, I have it set to automatically load for any of my Minstrel characters. Just in case you happen to have more than one of them. But for other ones, like the deed tracker, I will often have it loading for more characters. In this case, just 2 of them. Same thing for the reminders plugin, which is very handy. I don't have it installed right now, but is very handy. And I'll generally have that turned on for every character. Valkyrie asks, excellent, I missed that. At what level can you start to write in the game chat? It's kind of hard as a new player not being able to connect with the other players. That is a limitation just put out there to prevent the so-called gold farmers and other people who are maybe a little bit more nefarious trying to interact with the world. So as a new character, you can use the say channel. In fact, let's see. So here is a chat window. In the button down here on the left, you can left click it to choose what output you're going to. And as a new account, possibly as a new character. Not sure which of those two. You have access to Say and Fellowship and Kinship right out. You also, although you can't actually join a kinship until after you complete the tutorial, the starter area. The world chat is definitely limited, but you might also be able to try the regional chat. I believe it's a little bit more permissive as to who can talk in that. And in general, the regional chat is, like it says, the region you're in. So if you are in Breeland or the Prancing Pony or over in the Old Forest, you can type in the Breeland regional chat, and people relatively near to you will see that, but not people over in Rohan, for instance. Whereas the world chat is everyone. And so the regional chat, I think, has maybe fewer restrictions on it for how long you have to have been alive in the game to use that. Let's see. Anything else there? The user chats, I think, are also restricted for a little bit. So you can also use what they call tells, or direct private messages. So if I wanted to send a message to Rosenbloom, I might see Rosenbloom and say, hey, do you want to group up with that bull? I can right-click, chat, start IM session. Hey, do you want to group up to fight with that? I don't want to type Plains Oxbow, so I'll just type semicolon target, question mark, and hey, do you want to group up to fight that Plains Oxbow, question mark. Awesome. So I think that's probably available pretty quickly. Oh, good. We're gonna do that. Haha. So if you see someone and you want to interact with them, you can use /say, or you can just message them directly. Some people come to this MMO and are really looking for a solo experience, and so they might not be interested in grouping up or even responding, or sometimes they'll have walked away to the kitchen, right, and they won't even notice that you have messaged them for 20 minutes. I'm guilty of that myself. So don't take it personally if you don't get a response, or if the response is no thank you or whatever. People play Lotro for all sorts of reasons, and some of them are looking for lots of interaction with other people, and some of them are just looking to get immersed in this beautiful implementation of Middle-earth, right? So it's hard to tell what. Like, if you say, hey, you want to group up, and they say no, or they just ignore you, for whatever reason that wasn't their jam today, might be tomorrow, Sometimes I'll get a message like that, and I was just about to log off because I got to go to work or got to go work on homework or something. It's like, not now. That happens. So after a little while, after a couple hours of online activity, you'll unlock access to World and Trade and LFF channels. Those are global channels, so everyone who hasn't blocked you or hasn't turned those off will see those. Let's see. Little Redhead thanks. SSG tweaks it to deal with gold spammers and the like. It has been time-based, it's been level-based, and Little Redhead isn't sure what the current setup is right now. So absolutely. I don't know what it is, but I would expect it's time-based. If you know the game, and if you're used to the game, and if you want to, you can level up pretty quickly. There are some MMOs that are very grindy to really advance in levels, and Lotro does not force that upon you. You can choose to artificially lower how much experience you get. In fact, on several of my characters, I have a Stone of the Tortoise, which just disables experience gain, because Lotro is so free to give you experience to level up if you want it. And so for a paltry number of in-game credits that you can get through things like completing deeds, let's see, going to this deed log, completing that deed, I got 50 Lotro points. It was 5 Lotro points, and buying the stone was 50, 100, I forget. It doesn't take much. And so you can buy a Stone of the Tortoise with in-game currency and just turn off your experience gain, and that's very handy. We really very much enjoy encountering things on level when we can do so, and And otherwise, we might shoot past that and suddenly be level 20, surrounded by level 10 enemies. And, that might be your jam, in which case, awesome. All right. Valkyrie plays ESO and Guild Wars 2 and want to try this out and find yourself mesmerized. Absolutely. I very much enjoy the experience of playing Lotro. And even the simple things like running around in the Shire, it's great. Especially if I've been rereading Lord of the Rings on the book, or listening to the audio narration of it, the book on CD. It's very very lovely to just sink in and let the visuals complement the book or the audio of it. Let's see. Okay, it says they'll try to collect Lotro points now so they can get themselves a mount. Excellent. I made, but I also use the plugin Deed Tracker, and the Deed Tracker is a way to know which deeds are available in game, but also which deeds you haven't done will give you Lotro points or virtue experience. Those are two very big things for me. So, for instance, we're currently working within the Enedvaith region of Eriador. On the map, you have the Shire over here. To the right of it is Breland. You come through near Weathertop, and you head south past Arachian into Enedvaith. And so, in the deed tracker, we can see that there's 90 Lotro points left to gain in Enedvaith. And since Little Redhead, Rosenbloom, and I are doing it together, we're each going to get that 90 Lotro points. And we can also add another 15,000 virtue experience, which is very useful for your virtues. And these are things that make your character just a little bit better, a little bit stronger in certain ways. So, for instance, you might have more vitality. You might have more physical mastery rating or tactical mastery rating. And these virtue experience points are how you level up those virtues. Awesome. You can get to that if you press K. That'll pull up your trait tree panel. Once you get to level 6, you can unlock this. But you can also see your race traits and your virtue traits. Most deeds will offer some combination of Lotro points or virtue experience points. And you can see a little bit of a summary using this plugin, but you can also just watch them come in as you complete deeds. This isn't necessary. And we can see when we finally get to Dunland, there's 235 more Lotro points to uncover there. Pretty much every deed in Dunland gives at least 5 Lotro points. That's very nice. Okay. Yes, getting mounts is great. Little Redhead points out festivals are also a great place to get mounts, and we have the Fall Festival coming on up here in not too distant future. Let's see. Do I have a schedule? That's not the one I wanted. Let's see. Calendar. Event dates.
This is what you want.
That's what I wanted. Aha. So we can click through to that URL. And this is a post that community manager Cordovan manages. And we can just scroll on down here. We're in the middle of October, and we can see we're going to have a weekend of Hobnanigans, the infamous chicken chasing game of the Hobbits. And then after that, next week, Harvest Math Festival begins, and we have 3 full weeks of Harvest Math. Oh, awesome. Egg Arthur, thanks so much for finding that information. Egg Arthur says VIPs, that is, people who are paying a monthly subscription to play the game, get access to global channels as soon as they're out of the introduction. The premium people, I believe that's people who have spent some amount of, they have bought something in the Lotro store. And then free-to-play, F2P, is level 20. As you can imagine in a game, an MMO like Lord of the Rings Online, just like some other MMOs, there is a shady underground of gold farmers and the like, and this is a policy to try and limit some of those bad actors. I imagine. I don't have any inside knowledge, but by context I can guess. All right, we have a few half-orcs that have crept up upon us. Let's go ahead and do something about them. Okay, awesome. So we can see the Harvest Math Festival starts on the 12th. That's Wednesday next week, and is going to go until the beginning of November. Awesome. We're going to be out of class soon, and I'm going to spend a fair share of time just not doing anything else. Durin's Day comes in the middle of the Harvest Math Festival, and unfortunately is not going to be available for those of us who play over on Treebeard, one of the legendary servers in which progression is slower. And we do not have access to the Lonely Mountain of Erebor, and so we can't go celebrate Durin's Day. Alright, some other bonus weekend events, and then and then the Yule Festival will start a month after Harvest Math dies on down. Awesome. Okay. Where are we? What's going on here? Okay. So we have gone ahead and added a apartment to our .plugin file. And this allows two things. It sets our plugin into a separate chunk of memory than other generic plugins that don't have their own apartments, which requires a little bit more memory usage, and means that Lotro can now tear down that apartment, which has the effect of unloading our plugin. Otherwise, there's no way to unload our plugin other than hitting the Unload All button. Okay, so we have the apartment for our plugin. We're just going to call it MinstrelBuff, and we can see that if we come on into our plugin, make sure that is loaded. It is. In fact, I'm just going to unload, put us back to a default, load MinstrelBuff. If we type /plugins, again, you don't need this, but if you want to engage with the command line options, the chat options, you can do /plugins to get a list of commands, and /plugins space list will tell you which plugins are available and the names by which you must reference them if you want to load them. So, for instance, 100 Deadly Decoy, if I go ahead and copy that, /plugin space load space quote 100 Deadly Decoy, we can see that that loaded. Awesome. And we can see the list of plugins that are loaded. Plugins space list. So now we can see 100 Deadly Decoy is loaded, and MinstrelBuff II is loaded, and MinstrelBuff has been loaded into its own apartment named MinstrelBuff. So if we want to unload that apartment, we have to reference it by name, MinstrelBuff. Now, if we were to put that back to that space 2, which we already saw as a bad idea, we're not going to do that, we would see the apartment name got truncated. Oh, that's MinstrelBuff. Fascinating. Okay, the apartment name gets truncated to whatever is before the first space. That's surprising and not what I expected, and also is surprising. So we're just going to go ahead and leave it at MinstrelBuff. Okay. Now that is changeable later, as I said, but it's very handy just from a I want to unload this and reload this. It's more complicated if you want to offer a UI way to unload the plugin, to automatically unload and then reload the plugin. That requires code, and it requires a separate .plugin file. So for instance, you'll see the in here, I have a couple other things, dtracker.plugin, dtracker reloader.plugin. And this works by explaining the fact that a plugin cannot reload itself. In order to do that, you have to first unload yourself, and then the plugin isn't doing anything. But a plugin can load another plugin, and that plugin can unload the first plugin. And that plugin can also load the first plugin. And so that's what we do. We have a second tiny plugin that you load. It goes and tries to unload the first plugin, or unload and reload the first plugin. And then when your first plugin comes up, it says, oh, try to unload that other plugin. And so you have to bounce back and forth between two plugins in order to do the reload, just by the nature of how this is. There's no way to ask Lotro, please unload me and then reload me. That's not a built-in feature of the plugin manager. partially because, as we already discussed, you can't unload a plugin, you can only unload an apartment. Okay, so we have made a one-line change and talked about all sorts of things. What do we have? Like here he says, okay, thank you. Oh, you're very welcome. Thanks for stopping by and asking that question. Little Redhead says, by the way, B4 streams on Tuesdays at this time, around 2 p.m. Server time, which is Eastern time. And Little Redhead is on before me. Little Redhead starts at 11:30 Eastern time, and is also happy to answer new players' questions. And oftentimes I and others are in chat as well. Okay. Awesome. Thanks so much for jumping into chat there. I'm going to just go ahead and paste a link to Little Redhead's Extra Life donation page. Again, no obligation, but if you did want to throw money in the direction of children, that is a way to do it. I hear children like money, or the things that money provide. Okay, so we have here the MinstrelBuff plugin. We've added an apartment, so we can come over to our to-do file. Oh, let's go ahead and commit some of those changes. To-do file changes. Great. And let's come on in, and this add and a reload mechanism, I'm actually not going to add in the full reload mechanism. I now have the ability to unload the plugin, and as a developer, if I need to do that to test something, I can do that pretty easily. I can unload it and reload it using the command line parameters because I'm comfortable with that. And I don't think we need a reload mechanism for the plugin at this time. I'm going to call that done. So we have the do file, add in a reload mechanism. We have the MinstrelBuff. So we're going to go ahead and commit that to take a snapshot and say added apartment for the plugin. An apartment is a memory, well, it's a term used in programming that's a little bit different. Crimson says, hello, welcome to Plugging Along, where we are talking about the MinstrelBuff plugin. So the term apartment is a good metaphor for sort of the little the wedge of memory that your stuff lives in, and so don't be confused when you see apartment. You'll also see it in threading models, and it shows up. Okay, we're gonna push out some of these changes. Great, and awesome. So. Clear out this nearby. So again, we're talking about anthems and sort of the wish list of what's going on here. We're probably not going to get very far into the design because there's been so much other talk. Totally fine. But again, the what anthem should we try to play next feature. Coming on in here, that's going to be two things. We need a way for people to say what is the priority list, the priority of them, and that's going to show up in the options window. And for that, I might take inspiration from the travel window, which, while I would say this is a harder thing to do when you have a bazillion options. So if we come into the options and we go to the sort, they have the ability to click on a place and click the move all the way to the top, move all the way to the bottom, move up one, move down one. So if I click move down one, 8 is now after 9. If I click up, 8 is before 9. I would say this is a more painful way to do things if you happen to have, at an estimate, about 50 different travel possibilities, maybe more. Now, I don't think it is easy to implement like a drag and drop option where you can just click one of these things and drag it on up, but that would be sort of the modern equivalent, is right where you click and reorder manually. He also says, woo, travel window 2 represent. Yes, thank you so much, Yos, for taking over the management and updating of the travel window. So, yes, this is not meant as a critique of you or who did it before. Oh, easy enough to see. Let's come into the plugin compendium, unless it's been removed from the list here. And travel. Vinny. Oh, Dahor. Oh, that was a reference, right? Dahor, initial travel window. Other people have done patches. He also is currently maintaining travel window 2. So not meant as a slight against any of these people, but reordering this list, if you have lots of changes you want to do, is less fun than it could be. And I don't have a good answer for that because, again, implementing a click, drag, and drop kind of a thing, kind of a mess also. So I don't have any good answers to that, but the good news is if we're going to implement a similar method, there are 7 anthems. So, and there's unlikely to ever be 70 anthems. And so even if they add another anthem, we're not going to get into the same trouble that Travel Window has, where it probably started with way fewer of these, and you just keep adding and adding and adding and adding, and suddenly the list looks like this. So, I think I would take inspiration on that. And just go ahead and add them into the MinstrelBuff options window, the 7 anthems, and a move up and move down. But I don't even think we need a move to top and move to bottom. There's just not that many. Yeah, says, it is a pain, you can be candid. Little Redhead said it's one of her favorite plugins. She has ideas on the sorting stuff, but she's not a developer. Oh yes, are you the Travel Window 2 dead? Yes, is. With 2 little times on hand to do all the changes. Yeah, I was mentioning that, worst case scenario, and this is a classic, I want to say insertion sort, but you just pick the thing that you want to be last on the list, and you say move to top. And then you pick the thing you want to be second on the list, and you say move to top. And so for each of these 60 or 70 options, you just click move to top, and then you're done, and the whole thing is sorted. But you do have to know what order you want them to be in, and it's a kind of a pain, and yeah, it's... Actually, my favorite default list, when I was playing a hunter over on originally Brandy Wine, and now I think that character's been moved to Landerval, I was ordering them geographically. So every travel skill I had, aside from the special ones like personal housing, kinship housing, was just sorted westmost to eastmost. So things like Thorin's Hall was the westmost one on the map. And it just sort of broke down when you talked about north and south. But you'd have Thorin's Hall, and then you would have probably Mickle Delving, and then you had Tinendur, and then you had Breland, and then you had Estelden, and then you had Ostgotherth in the Lundlands. And so for me, sorting them west to east helped me get a sense of the geography, but also just was a way to do it, right? It's oh yeah, and Foreshell needs to be in there somewhere. So Forkel, and again, you would just be comparing the west-east coordinates. So Tinendur is 67 west, and Forkel is 70 west. So Surikaila, and then Tinendur. But that meant every time I got a new skill that was slotting in there, like Surikaila, I was like, okay, boom, 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 as I sorted into place. The Redhead says she wants to thank Hios so much, or thank them for keeping that plugin active, Travel Window 2, because she relies on it so much. And Garther says, if I had infinite time, I'd probably make it a tree structure. For example, like sequence bar sequences. Maybe with expand collapse. That's an interesting idea. The Redhead thinks it'd be neat to have some sort of pre-authored sets of sorting, like the cube or the B4 sort, where it's just geographically west to east, or the default sort, or like the alphabetical sort, or whatever. The map feature, says Hios, Travel Window needs a complete rework. Oh, right. Oh, hey. I tried to index a null value. Oh, well. Womp womp. Well, there are, and I apologize if that's not quite right, asks in chat, is the Tonic Bars plugin still good? What a great question. That's not actually a plugin that I've seen yet. So if I went and said Tonic Bars, we can see it is listed in the outdated Lotro interfaces, but ultimately that just means it probably hasn't been updated recently, although it has been updated recently, last updated in August 25th. So I'm guessing, yes, let's go ahead and add that in. Downloaded, installed, done. And come on in to the... Come on in here, click that little green icon, that little circle to force a refresh, and come on down to tonic bars. We can see if we load this on up, it is loaded in a fascinating initial configuration. I would say it's definitely still up, and we can see if we go to the Lotro interface website and just do a quick search, tonic bars, that, yes, odd that it is in the outdated interfaces. It might be nice to get that moved somewhere else if it's being actively updated, but the last update was August, and the previous update before that was 2012. So I can see why it was moved. Okay, so it looks like we are in a beta of bringing it back up. So cool, Nuclear Tonic. That's awesome that you're making progress on that. Neat. I don't actually know much about tonic bars at all, but I love the fact that it's been updated recently. So yeah, run with it, play with it. But it's probably going to be a little finicky because it's in a beta state. Or wasn't, yeah, it's version 301 beta. So I would guess that you might experience some issues. And if you do, I would recommend going ahead and popping a comment on down here on the plugin page. Just post reply. It might want you to have a login to the site. It's well worth it to just say, here's what's up. If you have an error message, like I just had with this travel window, I could go ahead and copy and paste that into the comment that I'm making, and that'll make the plugin author's life a lot easier if you can just copy paste that error message, and that usually includes, as we can see here, a specific file and a specific line number and the problem. In this case, that field was a nil value, and that means a lot more to plugin developers than it might to a non-plugin developer. It gives us an exact point to look for, and then we can try to figure out, well, why was it nil? We know why that's a problem, but we don't necessarily know why it was nil, and we can work backwards from there. And on that note, just says, okay, y'all got me. I will finish work and try to improve travel window a little today. I would say I'm just curious why I got a null exception there. But I have looked at the map thing in the past, and it has worked, and I just don't remember what it does, which is why I was looking. So, great question. Tonic bars apparently was left on the shelf for like 10 years and has just been resurrected. So jump in there and give it a try, see what's up with it. Little Redhead says, I would like it if I could hide some of them when I do my resort. So it'd be drop by default, drop down to the bottom. Okay, yeah, we're talking about, let me load back up the travel window plugin.
Sorry.
Oh, that's no worries. It's a little slow on the load. I wonder if it's doing a skill check when we first load up. And that does take a little while to check which of these skills are trained. So, something that has struck me as an interesting possibility is doing some asynchronous loading. If you're not doing file loading, which you have to do during startup or wonkiness happens, if you're going to do skill checking, it makes me wonder... I think Thurlor was recently bouncing some ideas around about do some work for oh so long and then just be done and wait until the next update cycle. So you can make a hidden window that does want updates, and every time we're in there, just make a little incremental progress. So we got a list of all the trained skills, and maybe that's the only thing that takes time, but we got a list of all the trained skills. Cool. Next update, check the first one. Cool. Next update, check the second one. So it might take 10 seconds to work through every skill, but in the meantime, we might get a little bit of less of that lagginess that comes from first loading the plugin. I haven't played around with that. Obviously, DTracker is guilty of this as well, but it may be a fair amount of that is due to the file load. The files are humongous. Okay, so Little Redhead was saying, I would like to... Oh, yeah, so if you're sorting them, it would be neat to have a little checkbox that says, just don't care. I don't have it. It's going to be 2 years before I get it. It should always be below. And I feel like... if there was just sort of a bar of dashes in here, it's like anything below here, just keep it below here. And the move to the bottom, maybe there's a separate one. Move to the I don't care section, and then move to top, move to bottom, only work above that dashed line. And so maybe you've only got 10 or 20 that you're reconfiguring between instead of all 70. And that's especially true over here on Treebeard. If we were on a non-legendary server, we could be level 140 in a very short amount of time, relatively speaking. And that's just not going to be the case here. We're not getting any more travel skills before January, unless the Before the Shadows expansion or mini expansion comes with some. Then maybe we'll get some. Okay. I am behind in chat. What do we have? Little Redhead says, seriously though, Hios? Longo? Shorto? When I start on a new server, I have to set up Titan Bar, Travel Window 2, and D-Tracker first thing. Absolutely. Travel Window 2 is really amazing, especially for a hunter or anyone else who has a lot of skills. As a minstrel, I tend to just default to using K to bring up the skills, and then just type what I'm looking for. So, I don't have Mickle Delving. 3! Awesome. And I just deal with the fact that I get some false positives. But as a hunter, there's just too many to do that with. All right. And then Little Redhead also has to make sure she has some others, like Lotro Pad and Buff Monitor and Alt Inventory and Songbook. There's some great plugins available. He also says that error is fixed on your drive and the bug fix is not released yet. I have so many of those. Lone Ranger says, howdy, welcome. Yes, impromptu travel window feedback session. It's great, but... The Redhead points out exactly. There's a reason why I wanted to start streaming about plugins. It was actually twofold. One, I feel like it's neat for someone like myself to see this happening. I don't know about galvanizing the community, but at least show like, yes, plugin development is happening very slowly right now on this stream, but it is happening. And also, if I stream for 2 hours every week, I'm guaranteed to be thinking about plugins for around 2 hours every week. Even if I have no time the rest of the week, I can at least make a little progress today. And so that was a good share of the motivation behind starting streaming about plugins, was at least I'll have time to work on plugins. Okay, I feel like the orcs have just started giving this place a wide berth. That's pretty.
There was somebody else here.
Oh, okay. There might be someone else here. So, using this Travel Window 2 UI as inspiration for kind of a, I'm going to say primitive, and don't take it the wrong way, but as a first pass at a sorting mechanism. So we want to come into the option window, and we want to add a list for the. Now we could do this in two ways. We could do it as this kind of a list box. We could do it any way, as long as we're comfortable moving these up and down. Let's come on in and check out what that is, actually. One of the great things about Lotro plugins is if something else does the thing you're trying to do, you can always see how they did it. You might not understand how they did it, but you can at least see. So if we come on into Documents, Lord of the Rings Online, Plugins, and that's in Travel Window 2, and that is... I don't know. Let's say source and options. We have options window and options panel. Not sure which. Let's start with... Yeah, let's start with options panel. It's 29K to the 2K, so there's probably a lot more going on here. So he also agrees with me that it's panel. Yeah, so sometimes if I don't have the author in chat, I just have to kind of take stabs in the dark, and so file size is a big part of it. So then we start searching around for what we're looking for. Now, naively we might think, hey, move to top, let's look for that text. But if the plugin has been localized, then that's probably been hoisted out into a localization file. So if we do that, move to, well, what was that? Move to top. We can come on in, and if you're using something like Sublime Text, you can go ahead and do a search of the whole folder, and we're going to search for move to the top everywhere. Awesome. We can see, yes, this plugin has been localized, and so move to top, we can see that's in the English version of text. And if we search for move top string, where is this being used? we can see it's only being used in one place, option panel. Awesome. So this is the right place for where we're going to go ahead and find that. Let's see, let's close that. Let's minimize that. Okay, so we have a move to move up, move down, move top, move bottom. It's a little disconcerting that those aren't in the same order as the UI, but there's nothing that says you have to do that. Whatever is easiest for the plugin maintainer, we're using absolute positioning here, and so the order doesn't matter at all. Okay, so what else do we have? That was the add sort buttons. Awesome. So that's just a function that does that. We also have the add sort list. That sounds very promising. Add general items, add boxes, add items, add sort list. Oh, let's see what happens in add sort list. We can see we have a list box. That is very promising. Oh, excellent. There's some chat happening that I am missing. Lotro stream. Excellent question. Is there a safe list as UI skin mods people are using? So Hios has already mentioned lotrointerface.com, and Lotro has popped up some more information via Moobot. Awesome. One that a lot of people use is the JRR skins collection, but if it is hosted on Lotro interface, it's a reasonable thing to try. There's one I was looking at recently that I haven't had a chance to try yet, but sounded really interesting. Let's see. It was something like expanded.
Yeah, move your stuff over a little bit because the stuff's in the way.
Yeah.
Code, they want to read the code.
So, the no, it wasn't expanded master loot. It was something. It was something that was just trying to make some windows a little bit bigger. Excellent point from Pierogies. Thank you so much. I had covered up some of this code behind me in the attempt to see this UI. I'm going to slide that UI on over, and then hopefully this code is still pretty readable. So we are looking at the add sort list function in options panel. And thanks very much for calling that out. Yes, if it is useful, I can blow up the size of the code. I never know what form factor people are watching on. Obviously, if you're on a telephone, this is going to be a little bit hard to read. If you're on a computer, you probably don't need it to be blown up. But if people are on tablet, great. Agartha comments that someone was asking how to make the inventory bag look bigger. Absolutely. I saw that in one of the Discord servers. I actually responded in one of the Discord servers. I don't know how many they were in. And what I did was I took a look at the sort of the sample plugin, the big bag or something like that plugin, which was, it was necessary back before you could just make your bag a single bag in the default in the game. And what I found is that you can use the set stretch mode, and that's fine. But set stretch mode combined with a window resizing doesn't work by default, right? Like if you have a resizable window and you have stretch mode turned on, they don't cooperate. But I feel like it would be possible to take that into account. Fergie says, thank you, much appreciated. Learning a lot here, otherwise be chatting more. You're very welcome. Glad to hear that it is useful. I'm going to move this travel bag out of the way. So, yeah, I have a feeling it would be possible to take the stretch mode into account with the resize code. Because if you're doing a resize function, well, the built-in window, the UI, the window that you can use, the turbine.ui.lotro.window, takes care of its own resizing. But if you've got your own window, you have to write your own resizing code, and you could definitely take it into account there. I believe you could probably respond to the window trying to resize with a stretch mode, but I don't know. So obviously the naive solution is just say, well, you have to turn off the stretch in order to resize it, and then you can stretch it or something. But that's just not a very good user interface. So I didn't have enough time to investigate further, but if you have a plugin for the inventory bag, it can be scaled up to make the inventory bigger. If you are just using the base bag, then it might be possible with skins. I have no information, no knowledge about skins. Okay. I'm gonna stop thinking about inventories a little bit and look at this. So we have what looks like a function for adding a list of shortcuts to the sort tab. Well, this is the sort tab. This is a list of shortcuts. Great. And it's using a turbine.ui.list box. Awesome. Well, let's come back to the API documentation. I'm using a version that I have downloaded on my computer. But you can also just go on over to the wiki. There's a version there, lotrointerface.com/wiki/lotrointerface_wiki, and then you can click on the API reference. So I'll pop that into chat there as well. And then each of the sections here, I like the UI of this version. It fits my kind of mental model of what API documentation should look like, because that was firmly established about 20 years ago. And so coming on in here to the, where were we? Turbine.ui.list box. Let's see, do I have room over here? I don't have room over there, that's okay. We are almost at the end of this. I'm going to go ahead and hide the Extra Life stuff. If you do want to donate to Extra Life and help raise money for children, you can do that in this link that I'll drop in here one last time. And it's excellent if you choose to do that. We'll be very thankful. I'll probably do a flip in game or something. Maybe a Kermit my hands. Okay, so we have a turbine.ui.list box. Now, list box is a simple list box for laying out child controls in a list. Awesome. And it looks like we are adding to this list box a turbine.ui.label. But you can add whatever you want to it. You can add, you might be able to add a control that had both the label and the image of a skill, for instance. That sounds like a neat thing to do. But a label is definitely the starting point. So for our code, I think I would want to add a control that itself contains a label, and then later on could be maybe a label and an image, or a label and even a skill icon, if we know the skill numbers for those anthems. And we have access to those if we need them. Okay, what else are we doing in here? We're setting the size, the position, the parent, the visibility. We can confirm that we found the right thing if we just change the visibility to false. Come on in here, unload, reload. I'm on the wrong plugin. Load the travel window. Okay, it's loaded on up. Come to options and go to sort. We can see the thing that we said to hide is hidden. Cool, we found the correct UI element. Well, hey, yes, as long as you're taking ideas for travel window, I noticed that if all I do is change the location of the little bag and I unload and I reload, that wasn't enough to trigger a save of the settings. But it sure would be nice if it did. Just from a me thing. Like, I know mentally if I come up here and I can go change some other bigger option and that will trigger a save out, but I feel like the position of the mini icon would justify a save. Aw, thank you so much, Farathan. Farathan has donated some money in chat, it looks, or to the things. Let's get that back up here. That is awesome. Thank you so much for helping raise money for children via Extra Life. I'm going to get out from behind this bush and do a flip. Maybe even breathe some fire. Well, Little Redhead and I both really appreciate that, and don't forget to keep your emailed receipt with that. When Cordovan posts the community loot list, assuming he's able to do that as he has done in the recent years, you'll be able to use that to get access to cool stuff. The one that we had last year, you can see last year's here at this link, and there's all sorts of fun stuff that you can do at various levels, and if the levels are similar as before, there might be a cool thing at 50, so that's a perfect amount to at least start with. Thank you so much for your generosity. Neat. That was very neat. Okay, so we found the right UI element because we came in and we said this thing is not visible, and the thing we were looking for stopped showing up. And so we're in the right place, right? This is the thing that we're looking at. It's a Turbine UI list box. Perfect. So we can start making a change. Let's bring up, not fork, let's bring up our Cube plugins, our Visual Studio Code, and we're going to come into MinstrelBuff, and we'll try to get something. Oh, that's... he also tried to post something that was interpreted as a link. What on earth was that? That's funny. In Chatty, it didn't show up completely. I think Little Redhead's on top of it. Yeah, and that was a nice number for the bug. You mentioned number 111. Excellent. So some plugin authors are using more modern tools like GitHub. And we can see here that this bug has been opened to track this issue. And that's really useful because it's a way to get bugs, among other things, out of your head and into another place. Just like I'm using the more primitive to-do.txt to do the same thing, where once it's here as a bug, we can stop caring about it, right? Like we will not forget that it, well, we can forget that it exists, but it will still be documented somewhere. And then when it finally is solved, then that can be documented here as well. It can even be tied if you have a Git repository, like here we have here for Travel 1 to 2, then specific code fixes can be tied to that bug. It's really great. It's a nice fluent way of kind of documenting the meta information about the system. Okay, so if you are using Git and it's hosted on GitHub, you probably have access to these similar types of tools. Okay, so if we come in here to the options window, let's try and get a list showing. Oh, excuse me. So the options window, the code that makes it is probably pretty primitive because we didn't spend a lot of time making it better. So we're going to load this options. So we already have a list being used. So that was probably something that's already in play. So right after select theme, we're going to want to add our own list. Okay, let's see what we can do about that. Right before soliloquy tracker, great. Add the control for Anthem priority. Now this is going to be a bit of a complicated control, so it would probably be useful to have a function to do it. So y equals add self, add Anthem priority control. And I'm saying we're assigning y because what we're using a local variable y to kind of increment down the large page that we're drawing on. So each thing, we don't have to do absolute coordinates. We just say this is a certain amount of pixels past the last thing that we did, wherever that was. And that was a certain number of pixels past the last thing. And so having this function return how big the control was that we just did is one way to do it. We could also just return the control, but I want that function to take care of everything and then just tell us how much further do we need to draw everything. And so we need to do two things. We need to make this function. Let's see. What functions do we have here? Make option, blah, 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 all that. Get debug effect. Let's go ahead and just put this on up here. We'll say function, option window. Cool, that's how we're going to start it. And we called this thing add Anthem priority control. Awesome. And we need to remember that we're taking in a y for the start, and then we are returning the new y after we've changed it a certain amount. So we're going to go ahead and come on back down here to add Anthem priority, and we're going to pass a y. Okay, so we're all set up for a function, among other things, that will make a control and return how high that control is. But we're also going to need to know where that's going. We're going to need to pass in parent here. So we need to pass in the parent object and also how high down we're starting. Okay, and that'll let us do, for instance, a very basic thing. Local test label equals turbine.ui.label, and we can just look down below where we are, label, at this label creation code as a template to do. So test label, again, any UI thing, the first thing we want to do is go ahead and set that parent. And in this case, we have a variable called parent. That's a pretty easy one. And we're going to do test label set size, and we're going to go ahead and say that is 50 tall and 100 wide. And so we can see it, we're going to set the background color to a turbine.ui. Well, you know what? Can I use? I can't. Okay. Turbine.ui.color. Or is that a Lotro color? Let's see. Oh, I'll have to remember where that is. My text, let's see, turbine.ui dot, where is the color? Color, there it is. Okay, turbine.ui dot color. Great. Oh, there's my IntelliSense. And we're going to make it something, there are some built-in colors. We're going to do something like rose. Maybe that's the color. Now, the documentation that you can download and have locally does miss some of the enumeration values. So you can always come back into the wiki version, come on into the color namespace, for instance, and see all of those possibilities that are predefined. Rose is not one of them, but Misty Rose is. Sure. Misty Rose. Okay, we've also want to set that position. Now, in this case, the set position, we're not going to do much with because we'll just offset a little bit. Oh, we do need to use that Y, though, because we're just placing it directly onto the parent. Whoop, I have accidentally hit page up. Okay. That is a little bit lighter than I want it to be. I'm going to be using the control that Lunar Water has here to go ahead and dial that into something a little bit more. Why is that not staying? Too close to the top? There we go. Let's dial that into something a little bit more noticeable. There we go. Great. Oh, I didn't actually need to change the transparency, did I? There's an orc. That would be embarrassing to just be defeated while I'm messing with a color. Okay, so we've got a background color, we've got a position. That's pretty much all we need to do. And then we want to make sure y has increased by that. So we want to say y equals y plus that 50. Okay. Oh, over here. Cool. So let's load back up MinstrelBuff. And in our options window, we can see we did not take into account that I said 50 wide and 100 tall. Whoopsie. I meant 150 wide and 50 tall. Let's give that another load. Back into the options. Great, we can see, well, we didn't give a lot of margin space at the bottom, so we probably want to give another couple of pixels, maybe 60 instead of 50, for the size of the thing and also what we're doing. And we can make that blended even more by bumping it out by another 5 pixels, maybe even more. What are these coming in at? These are coming in at make option checkbox. Let's see. That's coming in at 20. All right. So we put it in at a x coordinate of 20. It's going to start at exactly the same spot as the other things. Okay, so our function is working correctly. We can go ahead and place something there, and we can return how tall or how much further we want the next thing to be. Awesome. So We want to go ahead and set the text of this thing. Test label set text. And eventually, we want to go ahead and localize this. Note needs localization. But for now, we'll go ahead and say Anthem priority. We're going to go ahead and nix that background color soon, but let's go ahead and make sure we're doing it with enough, just the right size. My color interface is being a little wonky. I'm going to blame that on my computer. But lunar water, what's going on here? All right, and now we can see the text Anthem priority. 20 pixels was enough. If we wanted to make that any bigger, it probably wouldn't be. But we're not playing around with fonts here. We're not being really fancy. So 20 pixels is fine and gives a little vertical space as well. Awesome. Okay, but at this point, this is no longer a test label. So let's go ahead and rename it and just say Anthem priority label. There we go. That doesn't actually change anything in the UI. We're good there. And so that background color, we can go ahead and toggle that off and get a sense of, cool, everything's great. Varel then says, after he slaps lunar water bug reports, I'm not trying to make work for anyone, but sometimes you see things and it's just like, oh, that's weird. And, you know, if someone else sees them, great. And if they don't, well, we can always go back to doing colors by hand with the RGB values, as we had to do in the ancient past. Okay, we also want to add a list box. Now, for this list box, we might take more inspiration from this other list box in the options panel. Let's see, what else is here? Just this one. Okay, so I'm just going to copy this on out into here where we can start mucking with it. Now, we'll have to ask ourselves at some point, do we want this to be a variable that we're saving for later, or do we not? And I would say that might be a reasonable thing to do because we're going to care about the order of stuff in here. And maybe that's easier to do if we have access to it. So let's go ahead and say self. And we'll go ahead and rename the thing from sort list box to Anthem priority list box. All right, so for a size, we're going to come up with a width here. That was a 480. Is that too big? Oh. Let's see what 480 pixels looks like over here. Nope, not that window. Options, sort. That is not too wide for our purposes, I would say. This is sort of the default size of the window. And so if we just hovered over here, taking advantage of that opacity, we can see that's fine. So we'll go ahead and keep the 480. And we're going to go ahead and for the height, we can use a fixed height once we're done with this. For now, let's just call it 50 pixels. We're going to need to play around with that. Actually, what might be a little future-proofing is a local Anthem row height equals, and let's call it 30 pixels, and then local Anthem count equals 7, and therefore we can set the height of this to be Anthem row height times Anthem count. And position, we know we want this to be over a few pixels. Let's just do the 20 as well. And we're going to start with Y. Same thing as before. We've got the set parent. We're just going to pass in the parent. Everything is being parented in the same panel for now. And we might decide that's better to start doing a more hierarchical structure so you can just move one and everything in there moves. But we're not doing anything too complicated here. All right, there is a set visible true. I do have to wonder, is that necessary? So instead of a set visible true, what I would like to have is a set background color. Again, I find setting the background color is a really nice way to just test, is the thing that is normally blank there? And so we go ahead and set back color. We can do a turbine UI.color, and oh, there we go. There's our populated list. Maybe it just needed to construct itself. Chocolate, that sounds great. We are just starting to get into the Sinterklaas season here, and there are some adorable little chocolates at the store the other day. Little Redhead is a fan of marzipan, I think? Marzipan. Or in Dutch is marzipan. And they had this cute little, basically the store's mascot is a hamster, and so they did a hamster dressed up like a little, I don't know, religious figure. Had the hat and everything, and so it was a marzipan hamster. It was very adorable. Fairthen says, after adding many options, what about a drag and drop for the themes? Actually, what I'm more tempted by is relaying out those options so that maybe there are some extra tabs up here. So you have a theme tab and you have an other stuff tab. And so this is starting to get really tall, especially with the debug options. But without the debug options, this is still going to be kind of tall here. And so a more general options panel like travel options has, which, I don't know, is this also embedded here? No, there's a button here, opens up the options window. Hey, yes. Did you know that the options window, there's different option windows? You knew that, Bug. Excellent. That's awesome. Window management's hard. What are you going to do? I'm sure they're pointing to the same underlying options. The real question is, yeah, if I change something on one, do I see that change on the other? The button has to be there, or you can crash the client. So I'm not a big fan. Fairthen says, time to get to work. Thanks for stopping by, Fairthen, and thanks so much for that donation towards Extra Life and Children's Hospitals. That was awesome.
And the cat video.
So you say the button has to be there, or you can crash. Oh, and the cat video, says Little Redhead. The button has to be there, or you can crash the client if you unsaved options in the plugin manager. Huh. Well, I'm not a big fan of singletons, but it does feel like this options button and the other options button could point to the same underlying window that is somehow visible. But I mean, it's you know, this is a very edge case thing, and I'm not trying to complain about it again. Spooky in chat says this game is such memories. Yes, I know this game has been around for over 15 years. They celebrated their 15-year anniversary in the last year. And still going strong. They're still coming out with new content. A big new push is coming up in November for the Before the Shadow expansion, mini expansion perhaps. And they keep coming out with more stuff. Oh yes, so this is the hamster themed sort of religious-y figure kind of thing. Probably Sinterklaas, given the season. But you know, it's got the hat and it's got the book that's partially covered up. And yeah, so that's the store logo. Albert Heinz hamster done up as a saint, which is just adorable. And in the advertisements, and I'm not a big fan of the advertisements, but when they do big sales, it's like hamstering is what the hamster shouts. And to hamster in the verb to hamster in Dutch is to hoard. Which means the sign language for hamsteren is, you know, that hoarding sign. So at the beginning of coronavirus, when they were like, hey, people, please stop hoarding toilet paper, the interpreters were busy doing that sign, which was delightful. A bit of levity and otherwise a bit of an unfortunate situation. So yes, it's marzipan! But, okay, so yeah, Travel Window 2, we've got this options here, which opens up the main window. And so if your options are too big to really fit in here, this is totally a thing you can do. You can also just say the control that goes in this window, this is also the thing that you try to render in the options window. And then it's just, you have to make the options window bigger or it doesn't work. So I've seen that as well. But a lot of plugins, when you start to have enough options, you just have to have a separate options window. I got really lazy with D-Tracker. So D-Tracker has a bunch of options. But if you come on in here to them, they're all just right here, right? It's like, whatever. This is good. You get a fancy gray background. That's all you get. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and set that background color to something, and let's go ahead and unload things. Load back in. And did we forget to parent it? We forgot to set y taller, that's for sure. Let's remember to say y equals y plus. We said that thing was anthem output times anthem count. We're immediately starting to reduplicate our effort. Let's go ahead and say local list anthem list height equals is anthem row height times anthem count, because we only want to do that once. And then we can say equals that, and we can even give an extra margin at the bottom of another 10 pixels beyond that. Let's come back in here. Awesome. So suddenly there's stuff there that would have been under my face. This is okay. So we have our chocolate. I question the chocolatey color being shown to us here. I mean, am I crazy? That looks like orange. And at no point does that look like chocolate. Wow. Naming colors is also hard. It's hard to name things that don't actually exist. They're just figments of our brain. Okay, so we have a box. We've gone ahead and said it's going to be 7 rows tall. Each row is going to be 30 pixels. Great. So populating this, Travel Window is going to do something more complicated. We're going to do something very Minstrel Anthem specific. So we could just add 7 things. We don't have to have an array, but having an array of things can make it easier to reason about them. So let's start by saying, okay, what are we doing? We're doing list box add item. Okay. So it looks like Anthem priority list box add item, and then we just need a thing to stick in there. And we need to do that n times. Okay. Now ideally, we're going to have this localized, so what we want is basically to use the anthems here that are in valid anthem effect, but we want to be able to talk about just them and maybe not the War Steed stuff. Or maybe we do the War Steed stuff, but that shows up later. Now, the problem with that, though, is these are not sorted. Fairthen asks, I don't understand why the game won't fit the options window to the current size of the plugin window which opened the window. Size of the plugin which opened the window. I think if I was a person making a thing and I had to err on the side of a plugin window that just seems to randomly change size based on, like every time I open it, it feels like it's a different size, or a plugin window that's always the size it was before and you just manually change it, the user experience of the always a different size one feels worse for the kind of person who doesn't know why it's a different size. It's just always a different size. I don't understand it. I don't like it. That kind of a response. And so, given that plugins aren't really a fully supported thing, like they're encouraged, sure, they're allowed, definitely, but Standing Stone Games and Turbine before them, they want absolutely zero customer support issues related to plugins. Now, yes, saving the size and position where it was when you close it and reopen it after logging out, logging back in, that would be delightful. But yeah, so yeah, if your goal is to have absolutely zero support calls for this fun feature that is included but isn't really a part of the main game, then I think I would default to the size of do as little of stuff. Fairless says I'll file a bug report. No! No, we want them to love us. So, yeah, I mean, so it's not like SSG doesn't appreciate that the system is there, but they don't have the resources to do much with the plugins at this point. There's just so much on their plate, and their priority list right now is not focusing on making the plugin environment, improving it, or doing anything other than some basic stuff. So, like, they're still, like, when Brawlers came out, Brawlers were added to the what are the possible classes enumeration, I think. But in general, They're not doing a lot at this point with it. And while I hope that changes someday, at least a little bit, that there'll be some momentum on the SSG side to maybe fix some known bugs, maybe add some new features. Like, oh my goodness, I know multiple people who would love for plugins to be able to peek inside carryalls, for instance. But until that happens, few bug reports. Yes, I appreciate this window should, at the very least, be saved as part of your UI layout. And when you log on and off, it'd be very nice if the location and size of it was consistent. On the other hand, I change it a lot, and I kind of like the default size. So for me, it's actually useful that it does revert to a specific size, because I'm changing it all the time for plugin development purposes. But then when I use it, the default size is actually really good for me. So I wouldn't mind a button that's like, go back to default. And for me, logging off and logging back on is that button. But my usage is not the average use. Okay, so we have a list box. Awesome. Let's put some stuff into it. So in general, we're talking about these basic, and in fact, let's start a new array. Anthems for priority, whatever, selection equals something. And here's, a problem I've had, and I need to fix it, or maybe now's the time to talk about it and fix it, is that we keep using these terms, I don't know, yeah, I feel like I would like a Anthem resonance equals as a global variable that I can use, and that is the thing. And then in this array, mapping this Anthem name to the position that shows up, is it valid, and if we're using fixed UI, which position does it show up in? Like, we have two different things here. And so then, if we come down for anthems for priority selection, we just say, 1 equals Anthem resonance. And we're done, right? We don't have to copy paste that same thing, and if we have to change it, we're changing it in one place. This is the thing that's been on my mind, as this is the wrong place to canonically define what this definition is. And maybe this is not the right way to do it, but yeah, Anthem compassion equals. And again, when I talk about not the right way, I do have to ask, like, should I include the fact that these are both Anthem 1 in the name? Like Anthem 1, Anthem 2. And should I go one step further, and should I say this is Anthem 1 lesser, or Anthem lesser 1? I don't know, what is it in the game? Anthem lesser, Anthem 2. Right, so this is lesser Anthem 1, this is greater Anthem 1. And that ties us really heavily to this design. But at the same time, if you're looking at this thing, it is much easier to tell what's what. This is lesser Anthem 1. Cool. And then the decorative name is resonance. If I was sorting this by... if I was looking for these to be sorted in an IntelliSense purpose, though, Anthem seems much more important. So Anthem 1 lesser, probably. Do I want the lessers all together or the ones all together, right? So greater 1 compassion. And of course the problem is that 1 or 2 or 3, those don't sort. So I'd probably actually want greater 1, Anthem 1 greater. Except lesser and greater don't sort either. So if I'm looking at in IntelliSense sorting of variables, now our graders are going to show up before our lessers, right? Naming things is terrible. Why do we ever name anything? Anthem 1, lesser, Anthem... I know, right? It's so tempting to just be like Anthem 1-1 and Anthem 1-2 or something, but I don't think that's a good choice either. We'll start with Anthem 1 lesser And we'll just play around with that. This is not going to go to print, as it were, anytime soon. All right, so we have the Anthem 1 greater. And we're going to go ahead and say the second one here is Anthem 1 greater. Now, the second thing we're doing, we're only doing the basic anthems. We're not doing the combined ones. And again, this is going to have some hard-coded stuff as far as Minstrels are concerned, because we're going to be paying attention to, oh, you have the combined one, so your basics are already taken care of. All right, Anthem 2 dissonance. So we have Anthem 2 lesser dissonance equals that. And these variables can be replaced in the French and German with their translated versions, but the variable name will stay the same. Okay, so Anthem 2 lesser dissonance. Excellent. Now this is a bit of a disconcerting bit, is in the UI, if you have an Anthem effect, let's go ahead and pop one up here. Okay, so the effect came from Anthem, a lesser Anthem 2, lesser Anthem 2 dissonance, but the effect names are only ever called Anthem 2 dissonance, Anthem 2 war. And so that there's a disconnect between the source of it, a lesser or greater anthem, and the effect. Just, yeah, it's a 2. It's all redliney. Oh, and we want to pop Anthem 2 lesser dissonance into this array as well, into this table. I'm going to use commas. I like them better for this purpose. All right, so let's go ahead and just whip through the other 4 of these. Anthem 2 greater war equals. Awesome. We'll go ahead and get that in there. We're going to go ahead and add composure and prowess. Some of these namings, I feel like it's kind of like Yoda's thing, like fear leads to hatred, hatred leads to hunger, something. Like, you can mix up the order of those things, and it still sounds reasonable, or as mystical as ever. And like, is composure less powerful than prowess? Is prowess more powerful than composure? I don't know. Anthem 2 greater prowess. Sure, prowess is definitely better than composure. Everyone knows that. What? Why not? Like, dissonance in war, I get it. Like, war definitely feels like an acceleration of dissonance. Well, it's legitimate. I get that. Resonance and compassion. Okay, compassion feels like it's more important than resonance. I don't know. But then you get to composure and prowess, and it's like those just feel unrelated. All right, Anthem, and this is just free people. And that's the special one. Requires 3 ballads instead of 1 or 2, and does not have a lesser or greater version. But it seems like it's pretty cool, and you might want to have that be a priority. So we're going to include that in our list. And these are the 7 things that you care about. And so what I would like is to know which of these things you have trained. Well, to look into that, Travel 1 to 2 might be a very good resource for figuring out how do we know if a thing is trained. And of those things that are trained, which of them are currently active with more than the 25 seconds on them, all of that's got to come. But we have a basic way to populate this dropdown. So let's go ahead and give that a try. We now have a way to loop through things. And again, we're just going to go take a look at Travel Window and say, okay, this is a loop for IV in pairs. Sure. We can do that. And instead of travel shortcuts, we want to use anthems for priority selection. And in here, let's go ahead and do that same thing where we're going to go ahead and create a label with that text in there. Well, we're going to skip the Z order text alignment. I don't care too much, but we'll leave middle left. That's fine. Set background color. I don't want to set a background at all. Set size. Let's go ahead and set that to be, well, just a little bit smaller than the thing it's going into, and a size of 20. That is fine. We're going to set the text to be V. And I'm actually going to use key KV for key value here. Although the key in this case is an integer, but I feel like that's a little bit more in line with how my brain's looking at this. But we're not using that key because we're just adding these in order. Actually, what will eventually happen is we'll need to add them in the order that they have been saved. So we'll be iterating through the list of indices in the save file, and it'll be like 1, 7, 2, 4, 3, 5. I don't know if I missed one, but yeah, it'll be about that. And all 7 of those will be represented. So we'll iterate through the order of that and grab the kth item from here. So replace with iteration through saved indices. Accessing Anthem, anthems for priority selection of K. Actually, at that point it'll be V. Cool. Okay, so we have that. We're adding it in. Adding it in takes care of the parenting, so we're going to leave it at that. And let's go ahead and just come on back into the list of plugins. We're going to load that in, and we can see, awesome, we have a random ordering of things because we used the pairs function, which doesn't guarantee an order. Does iPairs do that? I can't remember. Let's find out. Unload, reload. Oh, great. iPairs does it. So everything in Lua, all those structures are tables, and those tables are under the covers, probably represented by a hash table, and hash tables don't have a consistent, by definition, don't really have a consistent way of iterating through them, except that in general, each time you iterate through them, you're probably going to get the same order until you add or remove anything, and then the order will change in what seems like random seeming ways. So you have to kind of force it into an order. And the way we did that here was using these keys that we can order off of. Again, having a sort order built into your data structure is very handy for when you don't want to show things in either a random or an alphabetical order. Okay, so we can come back in, we can kind of say, okay, this was more space than we needed for 20. Let's pack it into 30 and see what that, okay, there we go. So if we're going to use icons along with this, which I think would be kind of cool, then those icons are going to be at least 32 pixels tall. So we actually want to come in here and say, let's set that Anthem row height at 35, and set this to be Anthem row height, so we stop having to muck with it, and it's going to show up more like this. Beautiful. What I am noticing is that these are all left justified over here. I would like to see some space on the left. Then again, it's very consistent with the previous one, so we're going to leave it. We'll definitely want to fix that chocolate color. And that initial set visible true wasn't necessary. I believe the only thing that starts off default not visible is a window. And I can't remember if that's a Turbine UI window, Turbine Lotro UI Lotro window, possibly both, but I think controls themselves are whatever visibility their parent is. And in the options case, it's visible. And we can see, I do like the visual distinction though. And let's go ahead and use the visual distinction of the previous box actually. So that theme, we have some set background colors. We're gonna hoist that on up and just make use of that. And that'll give us some nice consistency here. And then we'll have to look into, oh, I have run way past here, haven't I? Okay, I'll have to look into how we do the selected one as a lighter color, but I really like that. So let's come back in, make a note here. Note, look at themes list for the selected item being a different color. That's neat. Okay, so this is sort of a starting point, and I think it's way too wide for our purposes. Let's dial it down to a nice 350. awesome. It may end up being kind of exactly the same width as the one above if we can get away with it, but I think the if we use that icon as well, it's just not going to fit. So we'll start with this. Okay, so we have a list of items. We can probably throw an icon in there. If the icon is to the left of the text, that'll help to kind of indent everything. And we want it on the left, not on the right, because the right side's the text ends at random spots for each line, and I think that would look a little weird. So on the left, that'll be great. So let's make a note to ourselves. Note. Put icon on left, label on right. Put icon and label into a control, add control to list box. Fairton says, it'll be interesting to use it. Absolutely. And then we also need to add move up, move down buttons. And that'll be probably just below it, and that'll let us go ahead and select one, move it up, move it down. And okay, so that's a basic UI in my head of how to get a priority in place. So the user can set this up once and just save it. And actually, this default list will work perfectly for my purposes, because my first one I want out there is the distance, and then I want to follow it up with war, and then assuming distance and war are both active, I would like composure, and those are the only three anthems I have as a red line. So, but if you were a complicated yellow line mix, I could see wanting to change that up. So I'm going to need to change that up for testing purposes, because this order, if nothing changed, is exactly what I want to see in the UI. So I'm going to have to remember to play around with that. Okay. All right, let's come to some sort of a close for right now. So thanks so much for hanging with me for this extra long stream. If you got any thoughts, questions, concerns that you want to throw in there before we wrap up, let's get it in there fast while I mull over what, if anything, I want to add to these comments. And in fact, these comments, let's go ahead and pull them on out into the to-do file. So we're going to go ahead and do that. I don't think we need that background color anymore. Okay, we're going to go ahead and replace iteration through this with iteration through saved indices. Access anthems using that. And then don't need that anymore. Cool. Okay. We've got add icon to left of anthem name. Now, what I don't know for sure is if we can make use of the inner game asset. I don't know if I have any easy access to that, but if we do, we'll just use that icon ID. Can we get the icon ID ? All right, that's a good thing to remember. Okay, put icon and label into a control and a control. Great, yes. So we'll go ahead and add this. Put icon and label into a control, add control to list box instead of just the label. Awesome. And then we need the move up and move down buttons. Great. Add move up and move down buttons. And we'll make that a little more explicit, that we want two different buttons. All right. And this is the options view of Anthem priority. Okay. neat. So that's a start. That's a once we get a similar look and feel to the list box above, it'll fit more firmly into. What?
I think he just woke up.
Did I just wake you up? Oh, I'm sorry. I went thump, and then the cat started crying. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, buddy.
We're not entirely convinced that the cats have object permanence, and so we might very well disappear when they close their eyes.
At least for him.
At least for him. Okay. Awesome. Progress has been made. Okay. I'm not seeing a lot coming on into chat. So, let's see. Do I have any orcs that I have to worry about while we're closing things up? The answer is no. Excellent. Okay. Well, thank you so much for sticking with me. We're about half an hour past where I expected I would stop today, but there's just so much to do and talk about. So yeah, that's everything we are going to cover today. Thank you so much for joining me on this exploration of Lotro plugins. I do hope to see you here again next week, and until then, keep plugging along. All right, bye-bye now.